Hey guys, tonight's story isn't about knights or dragons. It's about something far more dangerous. Sugar. Not the kind you sneak from your pantry, the kind that sticks to your teeth like guilt and occasionally contains rodents. Imagine candy so hard it could double as currency, so sticky it could remove dental work you didn't know you had, and so suspicious it might wink at you before you bite it. And yet, in medieval villages, people lined up for it like it was salvation. Tonight, you'll see why. But before you get too cozy, take a second to gently tap that new hype button YouTube just added. It really does help little guys like me push through the algorithm. And take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling, and drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now get comfortable, let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. You wake up with molasses in your hair. Again, no one remembers how it got there, and least of all you. But the smell is comforting and mildly alarming. Outside, the rooster sounds like he's eaten a licorice root and regrets it. It's a festival day, allegedly. Or maybe someone just spilled honey and decided to call it religion. Your blanket, which is more whole than fabric at this point, crackles when you move. This is because someone, probably you, definitely not you, fell asleep mid-snack again. Your pillow smells like aniseed and disappointment. You groan, roll over, and discover that the bottom half of your hair is now permanently fused to your straw mattress. A small price to pay, you think, for the joy of boiled sugar dreams. The cottage groans with you. Beams creak in sympathy. Somewhere downstairs, someone curses the way only someone trying to light a fire with damp kindling can. You recognize the rhythm of the muttering. It's your uncle, or your mother, or possibly both, in unison. You rise with the grace of a thawing biscuit and shuffle toward the basin, which contains a 1/4 inch of water and something that might have once been a beet. You splash it on your face. It smells vaguely of carrots and regret. Outside, the sun squints at you through the crooked window, already regretting being awake. A bee hovers past, loops twice around your ear like it's judging your hygiene, then leaves without comment. You take that personally. You dress in yesterday's clothes, mostly because they're also tomorrow's clothes, and the only clothes that haven't crusted into candy sculptures. Your shirt is stained with sugar beet juice in a pattern that looks vaguely like St. Agnes, depending on the angle and your level of spiritual optimism. You chew a corner of oatcake from your pocket, realize it's actually bark, and chew it anyway. The village is already murmuring when you step outside. Doors creak open like gossiping mouths. A donkey yawns. Children dart between legs like sugar-starved ferrets. Today, the air smells different. It smells like possibility, and boiled fruit, and bees. Lots of bees. You pass old Marta by the well. She's sucking on a fennel stalk with the concentration of someone reliving a vivid memory or planning a revenge. Her lips are purple, which either means blackberries or curses. She watches you with a look that suggests she remembers the last time you tried to make your own syrup taffy and nearly set the pig on fire. You nod respectfully and move on. The square is slowly becoming what the village optimistically calls a market. A single table leans under the weight of jars labeled in a script only the apothecary's cat can read. Nearby, a man unrolls a blanket covered in candied nuts that appear to have bonded into one aggressive cluster. A child taps it with a stick and is nearly rebounded into a nearby bucket. No one is concerned. The child's mother simply mutters something about consequences and continues setting out her licorice shoestrings. A bell rings faintly, which is strange, because the village doesn't have a bell. It's just a child hitting a pot with a spoon in a rhythm he insists is a sugar dance. You nod along anyway. The spirit is there. Nearby, The baker's apprentice emerges from the shop holding a tray of what might be barley tarts or might be roof tiles with ambitions. He drops one. It bounces. Someone cheers. You take a tart. It cracks in half with a sound like breaking promises and tastes faintly of honey and someone else's pantry. The Reeve is standing in the middle of it all, holding a small sign that reads, "Sweet Tax?" with the question mark scratched in by someone less optimistic. His robe is dusted with flour, his mouth dusted with powdered tragedy. He's attempting to count jars. You pass him a piece of hard candy from your pocket as tribute. He accepts it with the solemnity of a man accepting his own fate and nearly breaks a tooth in front of you. He smiles anyway. Duty. The candy merchant hasn't arrived yet, but rumors have. They flutter through the crowd like rappers on the wind. Some say he's bringing amber sugar from the coast. Others say he was run out of the last village for selling crystallized pickles. A small boy swears he saw the merchant's mule wearing spectacles and reading a map. The boy's sister insists he's lying. The boy insists the mule winked at him. The crowd nods. It sounds plausible. You wander toward the edge of the square, where the trees lean in like nosy aunts. A stump has been cleared for what looks like a demonstration. An old man with no teeth and a beard full of rose petals is boiling something in a pot that smells suspiciously like glue and berries. He claims it's berry ribbon. You watch it stretch. It stretches back. You make eye contact. It winks. Somewhere, someone screams. It's the kind of scream that suggests a burnt tongue or a personal betrayal. Either way, it's candy-related. The scream is followed by laughter, then coughing, then the unmistakable sound of a goat chewing on something it probably shouldn't. You glance down the alley and see Oswald the goat munching on what looks like half a sugar loaf and someone's bonnet. You nod. Nature. As the sun climbs, the crowd thickens, like jam left too long on the fire. Children dart between legs, holding sticks dipped in dubious syrup. An old woman offers you a chunk of something she calls spiced amber. It smells like cloves and boot polish. You take it, bite it, and are instantly transported to a time before teeth. She cackles. You bow. Fair play. The candy merchant still hasn't arrived. Attention rises. People are eyeing each other's baskets with the calculation of low-level theft. Someone starts trading ginger lumps for licorice coins. A deal goes badly. A peppermint is thrown. A child cries. A man swears it was mint-related trauma. The Reeve intervenes with a fig bar. Just as things are about to spiral into licorice-fueled chaos, a cart rolls in. It creaks like an old story. The mule pulling it is indeed wearing spectacles. The driver wears a cloak of spun sugar threads and a smile that looks like he knows every secret your teeth have ever tried to hide. The candy merchant has arrived, and you, hair sticky, breath sweet, and mouth full of suspicion, are ready. A cart rolls in from the east, wheels squeaking like guilty mice. The sugar merchant is here, wearing a hat shaped like a pear and smiling like a man who knows everyone's cavities by name. You suspect most of his wares are lies, but they sparkle, and that's enough. The mule pulling the cart is ancient, cross-eyed, and appears to be wearing a scarf made of licorice whips. You're not sure if this is fashion, punishment, or a statement. The cart itself is a roving shrine to poor restraint and sticky fingers, painted in fading stripes of red and gold, with dangling charms shaped like cherries, teeth, and things that might once have been apples before time and sugar had their way with them. Children gather first, because of course they do. They emerge from hedges, barrels, rooftops, and one mysteriously from the thatch of a tavern. They swarm the cart like flies to a pie someone left on a windowsill too long and now won't admit is cursed. The merchant hops down with a flourish, bowing to no one in particular and 3 people simultaneously. He introduces himself as Master Sucrose von Blibble, which no one believes but everyone accepts, because people who sell sweets often lie, but only in the most delicious ways. His mustache curls upward like it's proud of him, and his coat sparkles faintly in the sun like it's been dusted with dreams or powdered sugar or both. Probably both. His voice is smooth, like honey left on a warm stone. "People of this fine, fragrant, frequently muddy village," he declares, ignoring a chicken who pecks at his boot. "I bring you delights you've never imagined, and some you've only dreamed about after eating questionable mushrooms." You watch from the edge of the square, chewing a piece of barley biscuit so dry it might start a fire. He gestures to the cart with the confidence of a man unveiling a holy relic. The canvas is peeled back to reveal jars, boxes, pouches, and tins, all stacked with the chaotic elegance of someone who believes safety is for the flavorless. There are striped sticks taller than some of the children. There are caramels wrapped in paper that rustles like secrets. A crystal jar contains violet petals suspended in something that glows faintly, and no one dares ask what. He pulls out a box marked rose sugar buttons for gentle kissing or immediate regret, and begins handing them out with the casual generosity of someone who knows the second one is never free. A small girl tries one and immediately declares she can taste the color pink. A boy licks one and announces he can hear flowers. The merchant nods solemnly and mutters something about synesthetic alignment. You're not sure what that means, but he says it like a spell, and the crowd claps as if a miracle's just occurred. The old women gather next, their shawls wrapped tight, and their expressions tighter. They approach with suspicion forged over decades and a very specific hatred for sugar-related chaos. Bertha squints at a jar of cinnamon pebbles of thoughtfulness and mutters that candy should not hum. Martha prods a gumdrop with her cane and declares it immoral. Agnes licks one when no one is looking, then says nothing but raises an eyebrow high enough to declare victory. Even they can't help but linger. The merchant smiles wider, like he's got licorice secrets tucked behind his ears. He pulls out a box labeled Royal Confections of the Third Imaginary Duchess, which contains neat little squares, the color of moonlight, and possibly treason. The mayor, who is technically just a man named Bramble, with a hat that suggests leadership, declares them suspiciously soft and buys 3 boxes. He calls it civic duty. You drift closer, watching as a boy drops a penny and scrambles after it, only to be waylaid by a taffy snake that slithered out of a jar and appears to be judging him. The merchant gently pokes it back into the container, whispering, "Not today, Basil," and you choose not to ask questions. You catch sight of something deep in the cart, half hidden behind a crate of peppermint coals. A tin with a painted lid showing a girl riding a cat-sized bee while eating what appears to be a lemon made of glass. It's labeled simply, "For the brave." You stare. The merchant notices. "Curious one, aren't you?" he says, leaning close. His breath smells like dreams gone slightly sour. "I only sell that to those who've already tasted something bitter and smiled anyway." You consider telling him about the time you ate molasses off a fence post and then discovered it was wax, but instead you shrug and say, "Maybe tomorrow." He nods as if you passed a test you didn't know you were taking. A breeze picks up, carrying the scent of sugared almonds and something faintly burnt. The crowd has swelled. A group of teenagers are daring each other to suck on scorpion pops, which do in fact appear to contain real scorpions. One girl tries it and immediately begins speaking in rhymes. Her friends applaud. The Reeve tries to maintain order by holding up a toffee mace and declaring all sales must be taxed. The merchant hands him a boiled sweet shaped like a coin, and the Reeve forgets what he was saying. You finally step forward and ask how much for a tin of honey drops for remembering lost things. He tells you it's half a copper or a good story. You offer him a tale about the time you fell in love with a girl who gave you licorice, then married a man who sold vinegar. He nods, hands you the tin, and says, "Bittersweet. Perfect." The sun begins to dip, and the jars glint like treasure. The mule sneezes and is offered a sugar cube with reverence. Children run through the square shrieking and sticky, their pockets heavy with smuggled sweets and futures full of dental regrets. The merchant waves, then returns to his cart, humming a tune no one recognizes but everyone feels like they used to know. As he pulls away, wheels squeaking, hat bobbing, candy wrappers flutter through the air like confetti or fallout. You pick one up, sniff it, and pocket it without thinking. It smells like cinnamon and secrets. You watch the cart vanish into the horizon, trailing sugar and stories, and you wonder if he'll ever come back. Probably not. But maybe. After all, people in the village still talk about the time a licorice whip predicted the weather and a gumdrop cured hiccups. You smile, lips sticky, heart lighter, and walk home humming the merchant's strange little song without realizing it. You visit the apothecary to ask what sweet root actually island. He tells you it's fennel dipped in hope. He doesn't blink when he says it, which is troubling. He's wearing 2 spectacles, one on his nose, one perched neatly on his forehead, as if preparing for a level of clarity no one else in the village dares to attempt. The shop smells like dust and boiling arguments. Shelves line every crooked wall, each one cluttered with glass jars labeled in an alphabet that might be Latin or might be the apothecary's own form of passive aggression. A cat is asleep on a stack of dried nettles. It opens one eye when you enter, registers you as non-threatening, and resumes dreaming of judgment. You explain you've been sent to procure sweet root for the baker's seasonal scones, and you'd like to know if it's actually sweet or just wishful thinking. He tilts his head and murmurs, "Ah, fennel." Then, with the theatrical flair of a man whose only audience is increasingly confused townsfolk, he lifts a crooked tin and removes a sprig of what looks like feathery grass, having an identity crisis. "This," he says, holding it like a relic, "is the root of delight. Licoricey, hopeful, slightly resentful, if overboiled." You nod like you understand anything, and he drops it into a pouch as if sealing a secret. "Careful," he adds, "too much, and you'll dream of fields that don't exist." He hands you the pouch. You hand him a copper and 3 crumbs from your pocket, which he accepts without question. You should probably be concerned by that. As you're about to leave, he stops you with a raised eyebrow and a sudden flourish of movement that dislodges a puff of suspiciously purple dust from his sleeve. "Wait, you must try this," he says, already digging into a jar labeled simply, "Cleansing Balls." You hesitate. "For the throat," he adds, "and the sins of the tongue." He produces a small, murky sphere that appears to be sweating slightly. You ask if it's food. He chuckles and says no, then pauses and says yes, but medicinally. Then he hands it to you with a pair of tongs, as if afraid it might remember its former life and lash out. It smells like licorice and mildew, and possibly time travel. You pop it in your mouth because you're afraid not to. It immediately tastes like bees that regret their choices. Bitter at first, then cloying, then bitter again, then a burst of what might be peppermint or despair. Your tongue goes numb, so do your teeth. Your eyes water slightly, but you nod like it's fine, because admitting weakness in the apothecary's shop is how you end up with an enema of boiled stinging nettle and remorse. He watches you suck it down with the intensity of a man gauging your readiness for alchemical marriage. "This," he says, clearly moved, "is foreplay in our village." You nod. You already knew that, but now you feel it in your gums. He seems pleased with himself and launches into a monologue about how he once cured a miller's cousin of chronic sighing using only a tincture of fennel, birch tar, and questionable optimism. You think about the miller's cousin, who now communicates solely in exaggerated eyebrow movements. You're not sure the cure was successful. He offers you a vial of something called candied clarity, which appears to be mint oil suspended in what may or may not be snail mucilage. You decline with the sort of polite urgency typically reserved for invitations to weddings you were only included in out of pity. He nods and mutters something about how clarity isn't for everyone. The walls seem to close in slightly the longer you stand there. Or maybe it's the scent of old sugar leaching from the mood figs shelf. You glance over at a bottle of tincture of calm that's vibrating faintly. You ask if that's normal. The apothecary says, "Only on Wednesdays," and pulls a curtain aside to reveal a rack of drying roots that look suspiciously like shrunken hands. You make a note to leave soon. He insists you take a packet of Chewer's Charms, little cubes of hardened syrup supposedly designed to realign the jaw and soul. You try one. It tastes of charcoal and thyme and something that might be betrayal. He watches you closely and then hands you a small, handwritten pamphlet titled, "Why Saliva is the Universe's Most Misunderstood Fluid." You promise to read it. You won't. The cat sneezes, violently, dislodging a sprig of rosemary and something that twitches briefly. You and the cat make eye contact again. You wonder if it's trying to warn you or simply challenge you to a duel of endurance. The apothecary offers you a sip of his root elixir, which he says has been steeping since the last comet. It's the color of suspicion and the texture of compromise. You accept a spoonful, mostly because saying no feels like it would provoke an earthquake. The taste is indescribable, which is the only kindness it offers. Your mouth goes warm, then cold, then entirely abstract. You see a bird in your peripheral vision that may not be real. You thank him. He thanks you for being brave. By the time you stagger outside, the sun feels too loud. You pass by a child chewing on a lump of something waxy who asks if your tongue is supposed to feel like a sermon. You nod solemnly. It is now. The square is still bustling. The sugar merchant is still smiling like he's made a deal with something unholy. And someone is definitely boiling sap near the blacksmith's, though no one seems to know why. Your pouch of sweet root swings at your hip like a talisman. You wonder if it will ever forgive you for what it's about to be baked into. Your lips are still tingling. Your ears feel warm. You wonder if that's normal, or a side effect of understanding the universe in brief flashes of fennel-induced lucidity. You take a deep breath that tastes like anise and decision-making. Then you walk toward the bakery, half a person, half a lozenge, wholly altered. A group of barefoot children whisper near the goat pen. They're huddled like conspirators or mushrooms, faces dirty and eyes bright, the kind of bright that comes from either sugar or lawlessness. One is holding something wrapped in greasy parchment in reverence. Another is poking the dirt with a stick like it owes him money. The smallest has a smear of berry pulp across his forehead, which you suspect is either a snack or a ritual, possibly both. You approach slowly, cautious of the energy that surrounds children in groups. It hums like a nest of hornets with secrets. The biggest boy, Raglan, looks up at you with the wide-eyed smugness of someone who knows he's already too deep in to be saved. "We have it," he says. He doesn't specify what. He doesn't need to. They part, theatrically, revealing the parchment bundle in the middle of their circle. It sits on a smooth, flat rock, like an offering. The air shifts. Even the goats stop chewing and stare, which is unsettling because goats rarely stop chewing unless they sense fire or sin. Raglan unwraps the bundle with shaking fingers and the kind of reverence usually reserved for relics or extremely cursed objects. Inside is a pine resin chew, shiny, translucent, the color of tree sap and childhood mistakes. You've heard stories. How it's technically edible, how it sticks to your teeth like guilt, how it tastes like chewing on a cursed forest. It's forbidden, not because it's dangerous, but because every adult who's tried it has declared, without exception, that it's not food and bad for the spirit, which, to be fair, makes it deeply appealing. "Where did you get it?" you whisper, already reaching for it with the slow determination of someone stealing fire from the gods. "Stole it from a stall," says Jilly, who is 6 and has no fear. The man was busy arguing with a turnip. No one questions this. That sounds exactly right. Beside her, Doran grins wide enough to show the infamous black tooth. He's had it since midsummer, claims he got it from falling in love with a girl who sells vinegar candy and heartbreak. You believe him. The tooth has an aura. It gleams faintly in the shade, like a warning or a badge of honor. He's the one who pushes the chew toward you, nodding once, slow and solemn. You take it. It sticks immediately to your fingertips. You pull. It stretches, reluctantly, as if trying to escape. The texture is wrong. It feels like ambition and regret. You bring it to your mouth. It smells like pine needles and consequences. You bite. Time falters. For a brief moment, your soul detaches like a badly tied boat, drifts out across a lake of syrup and lichen, and sees itself from above. You are both within and without. You are the forest. You are the tree. You are the thing that gnaws the tree. You are the scream muffled in moss. Then you are back. The children are watching you, silent and too still. It's fine, you croak, voice 2 tones lower and slightly haunted. They cheer. Jilly claps. Raglan slaps your back hard enough to dislodge your sins. Doran offers you a swig from a bottle filled with something that might be elderberry wine or just particularly aggressive vinegar. You don't drink it, but you respect the gesture. You sit in the dirt with them, passing the chew around like a relic. Every bite brings a different horror. Jilly laughs and declares it crunchy air. Doran says it tastes like bark that remembers being bark. Raglan swears he saw a crow explode in the distance the moment he swallowed. No one argues. You all feel the weight of the chew, not in your stomachs, but in your lineage. A younger boy named Fen drops his piece and tries to eat it off the ground. The chew sticks to a rock, the rock sticks to his face, and for one glorious moment he becomes a creature of earth and sugar and defiance. The goats back away. One bleats a low, uncertain bleat. You hear your name whispered on the wind, or maybe it's just your own breath trying to leave. You lean back on your elbows, chewing the last sliver of the resin, which now feels like it's trying to bond permanently to your molars. The world takes on a faint shimmer. Not beautiful, just slightly wrong. The grass leans sideways. The clouds drift in suspicious patterns. You blink and see the shape of a man in the sky made entirely of fennel stalks. You do not mention this. Some things are for keeping. Doran reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small pouch of sugar sand, which he sprinkles over the rock like an offering. To balance the flavors, he says. You suspect this is alchemy, or at least what passes for it when the local wizard is in jail for fermenting sap in the church font. You lick the sugar sand. It's better. Worse. You're not sure. The children begin theorizing. Could the chew be weaponized? Could you trade it to a noble for a donkey? Would it work as a love charm if steeped in river water during a lunar eclipse? They argue. They draw diagrams in the dust. Someone proposes founding a secret guild. You suggest matching sashes. No one listens. Eventually, the chew is gone. The parchment lies limp and translucent, stained with the echoes of sap. The children sit in silence, all of you slightly altered, as if the chew rearranged something subtle inside each of you. Not enough to notice, just enough to remember. The goats return to chewing, but they watch you now. One of them narrows its eyes. You stare back, feeling judged in a way that suggests the goat knows everything and forgives nothing. You break eye contact first. The sun is low by the time the children disperse. Jilly runs off to sell thistle seeds to a man who doesn't need them. Doran mutters something about destiny and leaves with the swagger of someone who just invented flavor-based prophecy. Raglan tries to climb a wall, fails, tries again, succeeds. You sit a little longer. Your tongue feels like it belongs to a different century. Your teeth hum faintly. You think about the chew, about its taste, its defiance, its sheer audacity. You think about how it wasn't good. Not really, but it was something unforgettable, something forbidden, and deep down, you'll chew it again. There's a rumor the well water tastes faintly of honey. No one knows who started it, but now it clings to the village like steam from overboiled treacle. The old women at the bench near the square have paused their usual arguments about marriageable turnip quality to focus their collective suspicion on the well. They sit like feathered judges, bundled in shawls that seem to multiply with every hour, squinting at passers-by with the intensity of owls that smell a lie. When they see you heading toward the well with a bucket, 3 of them cross themselves, and one just hisses softly. You draw the water slowly, theatrically, because you've always had a flair for minor drama, and because the rope squeals in a way that makes everything feel more important. The bucket emerges, dripping and unimpressed. The water inside looks like water, not golden, not glowing, not whispering forbidden names. You lift it with both hands and sip. It is just water, but it's also not. There's something beneath the wetness, a whisper, a taste not of honey exactly, but of something pretending very hard to be honey. It rests on your tongue like a memory you didn't ask for. You take another sip, certain now. It's sweet, not cloying, not overwhelming, just unexpected, like finding a poem in your soup or your name in a stranger's mouth. You look over your shoulder. The old women are still watching. One of them, Agnes, who's 90 if she's a day, and allegedly once hexed a bishop into baldness, narrows her eyes and leans toward the others. She's tasted it, she rasps, as if you've just licked the devil's thigh. I told you. It started again. You don't know what island. You're not sure you want to. By mid-morning, half the village has heard you drank from the well and lived. 2 small children ask if you now speak B. 1 goat follows you for an hour, bleating with what feels like intent. You try to ignore it, but its stare feels pointed. The blacksmith's apprentice offers to trade you a spoon if you can tell him what the sweetness means. The spoon is bent. You consider it. At lunch, Bramble, the not technically mayor, calls an emergency gathering in the square. He arrives breathless, clutching a parchment he claims is the original well charter, though it turns out to be a menu from a failed tavern that once served salted porridge as a dessert. Still, he waves it like a decree and demands calm. There are whispers of sugar in our sacred water, he announces, pacing dramatically near the well. This could mean anything, from blessing to blight to banishment. He pauses for effect, or worse, taxes. The crowd murmurs. Someone sobs quietly. A duck quacks, possibly in agreement. A debate breaks out. Bertha says the well is clearly possessed. Martha believes it's proof someone's been throwing toffees into it to curry favor with the gods of indulgence. Agnes says nothing but dramatically unpeels a candied fig and bites it like vengeance. Doran, yes, black-toothed Doran, stands and proposes that perhaps the sweetness is just joy. The silence that follows is aggressive. You slip away before they ask you to testify. You don't need to explain that the sweetness didn't feel like joy. It felt like memory, like something familiar buried too deep to name. It tasted like something from before. Before what? You're not sure, but the feeling stays with you all afternoon, trailing behind you like a shadow made of syrup and questions. The baker claims the well water made his dough rise better than usual. The priest claims it ruined his holy tea. The tavern woman says it makes ale taste like flirting. The mule behind the blacksmith licks the trough 3 times, then kicks a bucket and walks into a wall. Interpretations vary. By evening, the rumor mutates. Some say the water heals. Some say it curses. One child insists it gave him the ability to speak in rhyme, though he's clearly just doing couplets and winking too much. Jilly claims the water made her taller. Her older sister claims Jilly is lying and was always that tall. They fight with sticks. The sticks are made of sugar cane. No one knows where they got them. At dusk, the square grows quiet. A single lantern glows near the well. You return, bucket in hand, unsure why. The air is cooler now, and the sweetness seems thicker, hanging in the air like something brewing. You lower the bucket again, slowly, listening for whispers, omens, candy wrappers. You sip. This time, the sweetness is stronger, still subtle, but more insistent. It curls around your teeth, tickles your throat, reminds you of a moment that never happened. A summer where everything was honey and nothing ever ended. You swallow. The taste lingers, trailing behind your breath like a secret. You crouch beside the well. Someone has etched a symbol into the stones. A swirl, a spiral. Faint, but deliberate. You touch it. The stone hums. Or maybe that's your hand. You stand quickly. A rustle behind you. You turn. The goat, the same one. Still watching. Still chewing. It blinks, then walks away into the shadows, like it's done what it came to do. You return home carrying nothing but questions. The sweet taste stays with you all night, curling in your mouth as you try to sleep. You dream of bees with human voices. You dream of rain that tastes like treacle. You wake with the sound of rope squeaking in your ears, the bucket rising again, again, again. In the morning, the well is closed off with twine and signs. Bramble declares it under official investigation, which means no one can touch it until someone braver, older, or more magical than anyone currently available gives permission. The village reluctantly returns to using the old mossy barrel out back of the Reeves barn. No one likes it. It tastes like damp grudges. You find yourself staring at your hands a lot. You're not sure why. They smell faintly of honey. You hear another rumor. Someone saw the merchant pour something into the well 3 nights ago. Something sparkling. Something from a bottle that didn't obey gravity. No one confronts him. He's already gone. Cart vanished, leaving behind only a trail of candy wrappers and uncertainty. You walk past the well and think about the taste. You don't tell anyone, but you still dream about it. Every night, you're sent on a task to fetch amber sugar from the abbey 3 miles away, which doesn't sound ominous until you realize no one will tell you what amber sugar island. The baker only shrugs and mumbles something about the color of relics. The innkeeper winks and says, "It's not for the weak-toothed." Even the apothecary closes his shop door the moment he hears where you're going, leaving a single lozenge on the step like a parting gift or a warning. You take it, of course. You're not suicidal, just curious. It begins to rain halfway out of town. Not a clean rain, not a soothing rain, but a slow, sticky drizzle that smells faintly of maple and confession. At first you think you're imagining it, but then your hair clumps and your sleeve starts adhering to your elbow with the patience of a barnacle in love. You look up and see the trees are weeping sap, golden and lazy, globs suspended mid-fall like they're not sure if gravity still has jurisdiction. You try to walk faster. This makes it worse. You trip over 2 roots and 1 insulted fox, then spend 5 minutes apologizing in a way that suggests you've done it before. The fox watches you limp away with judgmental eyes and an air of legal preparedness. Your shoelace gives up on being a shoelace and becomes a metaphor. You do not stop to fix it. You are sticky, late, and now humming slightly from the lozenge, which has either dissolved or become part of your soul. The abbey rises from the hill like a structure designed by someone who'd never seen architecture, but had strong opinions about stone. It leans slightly, hums gently, and smells like beeswax and forgotten vows. The gate creaks open before you knock. You tell yourself this is normal. You are wrong. A monk greets you in the archway. He is barefoot, smiling, and dressed in robes so stained with something dark and crystalline that you momentarily consider backing away. He speaks only in rhymes. You realize this too late. Welcome, traveler, to our hive, where sugar makes the soul alive. What brings you to our holy hall? A quest? A dare? A sweet downfall? You stare, drenched and tacky, unsure how to respond in meter. You mumble something about a baker and amber sugar and possibly divine pastries. The monk nods solemnly and gestures for you to follow, robes swaying like syrup in wind. You leave behind a trail of leaves and existential stickiness. Inside the abbey, everything gleams faintly. Candles burn low but bright, casting honeyed shadows across the stone. You pass a row of jars, each labeled with things like Saint's Crumble, Blessed Shards, and Penance Drizzle. You do not ask. One of them hums. You try not to look at it. The monk leads you to a long table where several others sit, solemn and slow, each gnawing on what appears to be rock candy in the shape of regret. One turns and offers you a piece with the word repent etched into it. You take it. You do not bite. Your guide returns with something wrapped in parchment and reverence. Amber sugar, he declares, as golden as grace and twice as patient. He hands it to you with both hands, as though it might ascend. You peek inside. The lump inside is crystalline, golden, and vibrating slightly. It looks like it remembers being a star, or a sin. For the baker, you say. For the baker, he agrees, then pauses. But first, a rite. He produces something flat, thin, and jagged at the edges. Holy brittle, he says, and smiles. Made during last month's lightning storm, a treat and a trial. You do not want the holy brittle. You take the holy brittle. It tastes like honey and thunder and old decisions. It is sharper than expected. It does not so much break in your mouth as declare war on your enamel. You feel something shift, then crack. A molar. Possibly two. You make no sound. You will not show weakness in a place that gives sugar a title. The monk nods approvingly. You have been tested, he says, and found crunchy. You're given a second lozenge for the road. It smells of mint and absolution. You do not ask what's in it. You bow, sticky and slightly fractured, and leave the abbey as the bells ring once. They sound suspiciously like spoons hitting glass. The rain continues as you descend the hill. You are heavier now, not just with sugar, but with understanding. Your jaw throbs. Your pockets smell like caramel. You have questions, none of which have answers that would make anything better. Back in the village, the square is quiet. The baker is in his doorway, waiting. He sees you, sees the parchment, and grins. You made it, he says, as though that was uncertain. You hand him the amber sugar. He holds it like it might sing. She'll rise twice as golden, he murmurs, disappearing inside. You are left alone with your thoughts, which now taste like molasses and dental regret. The sun sets slowly, casting a golden sheen over everything, as if the world itself is turning to candy. You sit on the edge of the fountain, bite the lozenge in half, and listen to the goats whisper among themselves. You think about the monk's rhymes. You think about your tooth. You wonder if holy brittle counts as a sacrament. You do not ask. In the far hut by the edge of the marsh, where the frogs are louder than the gods, and the fog tastes faintly of mildew and unresolved feelings, lives Marin. They call her the toothless oracle, though she has one tooth left, crooked, translucent, and shaped like an accusation. She wears scarves, made of things that should not be scarves, and speaks with the certainty of someone who once misled a king and got away with it. She claims to have eaten the first gumdrop, back when gum was made of fish bladders and joy had to be scraped from the bones of eels. You're not entirely sure why you've come. Possibly curiosity. Possibly the baker's apprentice dared you. Possibly the strange dream you had last night in which a licorice root whispered your name in a voice like a dulcimer and promised enlightenment in exchange for your third favorite memory. You're not even sure what that memory is, but you've felt slightly less nostalgic all day. Her hut smells like damp wool and molasses regrets. The door creaks in a way that feels choreographed, and you half expect a crow to caw as you enter. Instead, Marin coughs, gestures to a stool made from what looks like a retired butter churn, and says, "Sit, sugar." You sit. She stares at you, not with her eyes, which are milky and aimless, but with something behind them. You feel very seen and also mildly pickled. She says nothing for a long time. Then she reaches under a pile of suspiciously twitching cloth and produces a small dish. Inside is a single boiled walnut. It is covered in crushed rose petals, flecks of something gold, and what may be beet juice or something more dramatic. She holds it out like an artifact. You do not reach for it. You have manners. She nods once and presses it into your hand. It's warm, alarmingly so. This, she says, will show you things. You ask what things. She smiles, which is mostly gum and implication. You eat it. The texture is wrong. Too soft in some places, too hard in others. The rose petals cling to your lips like perfume with intent. The walnut tastes like memory and lightly singed prayer. You swallow. The warmth spreads. The room tilts slightly, but politely. Marin begins humming, low and rhythmic, like someone lulling a snake into confessing. Her eyes roll back. Yours try to follow. You blink, and she is both closer and farther than she was a moment ago. The walls breathe. The floor sighs. You see a candied apple the size of a horse. You see a child biting into it, only to vanish. You see a kingdom that outlawed sweetness and fell to madness 3 Thursdays later. You see a jar labeled, "Do not open," already opened. You see a long table, empty except for one perfect gumdrop, glowing with unnatural light. You see yourself, older, holding a spoon made of bone and laughing like someone who's forgotten what else to do. Then you're back. You are on the floor. The stool is gone. Marin is watching you with something like amusement and something like sorrow. She places a damp cloth on your forehead, which somehow makes you feel like both a child and a prophet. Did you see it? She asks. You nod. You do not elaborate. You are not sure you could. Your tongue feels like it's been painted with sugar and riddles. She cackles, the sound sharp and wet. Good. That means it's working. You ask what island. She doesn't answer. Instead, she hands you a second walnut, this one charred and humming faintly. Keep this for when you're ready to forget, she says. But don't eat it too soon. Memory is like nougat, better when it stretches. You accept it without question, because you have lost the ability to argue with women who might be older than time. You tuck it into your pocket. It thrums against your leg like a guilt you haven't named yet. She waves her hand, dismissing you. You stand, legs uncertain, head full of sugar and prophecy. As you open the door, she calls out, "Careful with your dreams now. They like to follow you home after sweets." Outside, the fog has thickened. The marsh croaks louder, though you suspect it's not just frogs. Something rustles in the reeds. You ignore it, with practiced grace. Your path back to the village is slower than before. Everything looks a little too vivid. The trees lean closer. The mud tries to hold you a little longer. You do not hum, but something inside you does. By the time you return, the sun is low, and your pocket is still warm. The baker's apprentice asks what happened. You hand him a licorice root and walk away without explanation. He bites it, regrets it immediately. You do not stop. That night, you dream of rose petals, of walnuts whispering riddles in a forgotten tongue, of a table set for one in a room with no walls. You wake up tasting petals and ash. You do not sleep again. You dream of vines, long, black, bitter vines that slither like guilt and wrap around your ankles with the practiced grace of childhood trauma. They drag you through syrup-swamped forests, where trees drip molasses and bees wear crowns. Your feet stick with every step. Your breath tastes of anise, and the air whispers things like confectioner's remorse, and you should have stopped at the third bite. Somewhere, something laughs. It's not a kind laugh. It sounds like licorice. When you wake, the dawn is pale and judgmental. There is something in your mouth. It is chewy. It is fibrous. It tastes like betrayal soaked in ink. It is licorice root. You spit it into your hand and stare at it. Damp, gnawed, and very much real. Not a dream, not a metaphor, a root, possibly sentient. It twitches. You drop it. Across the room, your brother blinks at you from his straw pallet. Already awake, already accusatory. "You were chewing in your sleep again," he says, like it's a crime against nature. You rub your jaw and mumble something about dreams. He narrows his eyes and mutters, "Candy witch." You scoff, as is customary, but don't argue. The candy witch is one of those things everyone agrees doesn't exist, but also doesn't get talked about too close to the woods, or after sundown, or in the presence of licorice. You've always found that last bit oddly specific. You rinse your mouth with rain barrel water that tastes like last week's lightning. Your teeth feel vaguely haunted. Your tongue feels like it's been scolded. You look down and realize your hands are sticky. You check the walls. They are also sticky. Something, somewhere, has oozed. Your brother sighs and throws on his tunic like someone preparing for war. "You should tell the apothecary," he says. "He has anti-licorice tonics. He also has leeches," you point out. "He likes those better than people." This is true. Outside, the rooster crows, then immediately regrets it. His voice cracks like sugar glass. You glance at him. He glares back. You remember you once gave him a candied cricket and wonder if this is his revenge arc. He crows again, aggressively off-key. You suspect he's making a statement. Society, perhaps. The town is quiet. Too quiet, in that way where silence feels like it's waiting for something ridiculous. The baker's boy limps past with a bandaged hand and a look of deep personal offense. You don't ask. You already know it involves almonds, a dare, and something flammable. The well is still roped off. The old women still mutter about the sweetness in the air like it's a moral failing. You nod at them. They squint at you like maybe you're fermenting. You head to the apothecary's hut anyway. It smells, as always, of mint, vinegar, and lightly burned toast. You knock. The door opens itself, possibly out of habit. Inside, shelves buckle under the weight of herbs, jars, scrolls, and regret. The apothecary is upside down, dangling from a rope contraption that allegedly helps circulation and definitely encourages head rushes. He grunts. "Licorice dreams?" You blink. "Yes?" Knew it," he says. "Storms do it. Electromagnetic sugar fields. Haven't isolated the variables yet. Could also be guilt." "About what?" He shrugs as much as someone upside down can. "You tell me." You do not tell him. He flips himself down, gracefully enough to suggest practice and just clumsy enough to suggest failure. He rummages behind a pile of dried nettle cakes and pulls out a jar filled with something gray and twitchy. "Countermeasure," he says. "Salted fennel bark. Tastes like despair but resets the palate. Unless it doesn't. In which case, avoid root vegetables for a week and don't trust mirrors." You thank him, take the jar, and leave before he can offer you any poultices. Outside, the sky is beginning to drizzle. Not rain, just drizzle. It feels indecisive. You chew a piece of the bark. It tastes like the memory of a punishment you once forgot. Your left eye twitches. Your molars ache in Morse code. You nod to yourself, feeling marginally more human. At midday, you find licorice root stuffed under your mattress, woven into your boots, and tied to the tail of the mule. You confront your brother. He swears it wasn't him. The mule refuses to comment. The rest of the day moves like syrup uphill. Everything feels slightly off. The baker's pies are unsweetened. The fishmonger claims the eels are humming lullabies. Agnes from the bench tries to sell you a dream trap made of sticks and string and the hair of an honest man. You ask how she found the hair. She grins too wide. You don't sleep that night. You try, but the licorice is waiting. You lie still, eyes open. ears twitching. Every creak of the floorboards feels like a warning. Every rustle is a wrapper. The dark tastes faintly of anise. Sometime near morning, just before the light forgets it was ever warm, you feel something at the foot of your bed. Something smooth. Something root-like. You sit up. There's nothing there, but your mouth is sticky, and the rooster isn't crowing. The morning begins with shouting, which is rarely a good sign, and even less so when it comes from the square. You're halfway through your second cup of barley broth, and wondering if the new ache in your tooth is spiritual when the noise swells into something more structured. Less panic, more ceremony. Someone is ringing the town bell. No one knows where the bell came from. It simply appeared one morning, nailed sideways to the blacksmith's shed, and no one has had the nerve to move it since. It rings only during births, funerals, and what the villagers call confectionery disagreements. In reporting the Khan Beatam, you arrive to find a circle forming. Not quite a crowd, but enough people to suggest curiosity, mixed with anticipation, and just a pinch of boredom. In the center stand two men, both tall, both red-faced, and both armed with oversized, dangerously rigid gingerbread men. One has a crack down the middle like it's seen some things. The other has icing eyes that refuse to blink. The taller of the two, Farnell, a barrel-chested cheese courier with a beard that might be home to 3 types of fungus, points dramatically at his opponent. He took the candied ginger that was meant for Elsbeth. His opponent, Carwick, who owns half a mule and the moral rights to the maypole, jabs his stale weapon toward the sky. "It was in my beard. The gods put it there." There is a collective murmur. You can feel the tide of opinion shift like honey poured into a boot. The old women nod. Someone in the back mutters something about fate and facial hair. You try to walk away. They see you. "You!" shouts Farnell. "You're the most neutral one here. You once judged the egg-juggling contest without crying," adds Carwick. This is true, though it took weeks to stop dreaming of yolks. They press a sash into your hands. It's labeled referee in crooked embroidery. You put it on. There are some moments in life you choose. Others choose you, aggressively and with poor impulse control. The rules are shouted by the butcher's youngest, who has decided this counts toward his apprenticeship. Each shall strike thrice. No aiming for the knees, elbows, or inner secrets. If the cookie crumbles, the crumbler loses. If both crumble, we blame the weather. The crowd cheers, or groans, or hums in a key you didn't know existed. You raise your hand and drop it. The duel begins. Farnell swings first. His cookie whips through the air, with all the elegance of a wooden ladle in a windstorm. It connects with Carwick's shoulder. There's a crack. The icing mouth of his opponent stretches in either rage or digestive discomfort. Carwick counters, smacking Farnell across the arm. Sprinkles fly. A child catches one and eats it. The child immediately looks disappointed. Round 2 escalates. Farnell aims for the head. Misses. Carwick aims for the torso. Hits. A raisin button explodes off the cookie with such force that it embeds in the mayor's cloak. The mayor does not notice. He is busy taking bets. You try to maintain order. You shout phrases like, "Gentlemen, please," and "respect the pastry." But they go unheard, drowned out by the chant now rising from the crowd. Crumb, crumb, crumb. It's not a particularly good chant. No rhythm, no flair. But it is loud. The third and final swing is chaos. Farnell lunges forward, perhaps guided by vengeance, perhaps by muscle memory. His cookie shatters mid-air, hitting Carwick's still sturdy gingerbread with the noise of a promise broken in church. There's a moment of silence as the pieces rain down. One lands in your shoe. Farnell looks at his hand like it betrayed him. Carwick holds his cookie aloft in victory, only for it to crack neatly down the middle and drop in 2 symmetrical halves to the ground. Both men stare at you. The crowd stares at you. The rooster, who has mysteriously appeared on a nearby windowsill, also stares at you. You are the referee. You must declare a winner. You clear your throat and say, "It was a tie." A gasp. The crowd explodes into applause and argument. Some cheer. Some demand a rematch. A few begin collecting crumbs for what they call historical purposes. The old women begin whispering again, likely writing new gossip into the folds of time. Farnell sulks. Carwick shrugs. They walk off in opposite directions, but not before exchanging one last look. It's not forgiveness. It's something stickier. You remove the sash. It's heavier now, as if soaked in icing and meaning. You hang it on the maypole. It may be needed again. Back home, your brother asks what happened. You say, "Gingerbread duel." He nods. You both understand. That night, you dream of frosting weapons and molasses blood. You wake with crumbs in your bed. You do not ask how they got there. The kitchen is hotter than the sins of the blacksmith's apprentice and smells like ambition, cloves, and something that may once have been milk. You have been drafted to help prepare the midsummer feast, though help seems to mean standing very still and getting yelled at by 6 different grandmothers who all claim the spoon is too short and the past was better. You nod dutifully, shifting between vats and ladles and infernal bubbling pots, waiting for an opportunity to escape or become soup yourself, whichever comes first. There's a tension in the air, thick as treacle. Someone dropped a cinnamon stick, and it's been declared a sign. You don't ask of what. You don't want to know. In the corner of the kitchen, under a cloth embroidered with what looks like regret, sits a large, pewter bowl of pudding. It is beige in the way that only ancient things and certain cheeses can be. It breathes gently, like it might be alive or at least aware of its own legacy. A placard stuck into the top declares it, "Midsummer joy fruit pudding boiled, blessed, bound by oath." Someone has underlined "blessed with jam." You lean closer. The pudding jiggles, not pleasantly, not the way milk jellies wobble after a long sermon. This is the slow, seething undulation of a thing that remembers pain. A custard with a vendetta. You step back. The pudding continues jiggling. It has no eyes, but it watches you. "Don't touch that," says someone behind you. You turn. It's Letha, the head cook, wielding a spoon the size of a canoe paddle and a gaze that curdles cream. That's the joy fruit batch. Special. Got preserved fruit from beyond the river. They say it only grows where people once screamed. You say nothing, which seems safest. "It's been fermenting since Candlemas," she adds, as if time grants it character rather than spores. Elsewhere in the kitchen, a child screams, not in pain, in discovery. You look over and see young Bramble, 9 years old, sticky at the molecular level, has flung a spoonful of the pudding at the stone wall. The lump hits with a squelch and then, alarmingly, bounces. Not in the casual flop of an overcooked dumpling. It ricochets. It arcs. It lands squarely on the shoulder of the mayor's cousin, who was just entering the kitchen with a flask of optimism. Everyone freezes. The cousin stares at the pudding mass now adhered to his robe. It shivers once, then goes still. He says nothing, just backs out of the kitchen like someone realizing they've entered a room already occupied by wolves. Silence stretches. Then Bramble giggles. Letha narrows her eyes. The pudding quivers again. Someone mutters about prophecy. You pick up a ladle, not to stir, not to serve, to defend, because suddenly there's a second splat, then a third. Then a spoon arcs through the air in slow, pudding-laden defiance and slaps against the window with a noise that sounds suspiciously like the beginning of a revolution. Children are screaming now, not in fear, but glee. The air is thick with airborne dessert. You duck, just as a chunk of joy fruit whistles past your head and explodes on the ceiling like a sugary meteorite. Letha shouts orders, but no one listens. The puddings have taken the high ground, the counters, the shelves. The ladles are being repurposed into trebuchets. You are struck in the leg. You go down. It's sticky. It smells faintly of cardamom and disappointment. You crawl behind a barrel of pickled leeks and fashion a shield out of an overturned tray. Bramble appears at your side, war-painted in jam, and grinning like someone recently crowned king of chaos. "This is the best midsummer ever," he says, before hurling another glob into the fray. Someone starts singing an old ballad about bravery and fruit-based conflict. A pudding lump hits the lute mid-chord. The music turns mournful. The ballad ends. You make a break for the door. Halfway there, the main pudding bowl erupts, not explodes, just rises, as if on an unseen tide. A wobbling mass, larger now, somehow fuller. Its jiggling is no longer ominous. It is declarative. It wants something. Perhaps peace, perhaps vengeance, perhaps just to be understood. You make eye contact with it. A bad idea. You see things. Fields of sugarcane. Faces smeared with laughter and terror. A festival long forgotten, where pudding ruled and people bowed. You blink. The vision fades. But your spoon hand shakes. Letha climbs onto a crate and bellows over the fray. Enough. Her voice slices through the chaos like a sugar knife. Children freeze. Pudding pauses mid-flight. The big bowl stills. She points at you. Clean this. There is no appeal. Only mopping. Later, you sit outside the kitchen door, soaked in custard and contemplating mortality. Bramble offers you a spoonful from the salvageable bits. You decline. He eats it anyway. His eye twitches. He smiles. That night, you dream of pudding. It smiles back. It begins as all horrors do, with paperwork. The Reeve, who has not smiled since his christening, and possibly never blinked, unfurls a scroll in the middle of the village square. The parchment is crisp, cruel, and smells faintly of vinegar and old ambition. He clears his throat the way one might clear a battlefield, then declares, in tones that suggest he once lost a game of knucklebones and never recovered, that the town shall henceforth be taxed on smiles. Smiles encourage licentiousness, he drones, and molar visibility has reached an indecent high. There is a moment of stunned silence, then a muffled snort from someone behind the fishmonger's stall. The Reeve hears it. He marks a small tally on a black slate and points. That's 1/4 penny for smirkage. Pay by sundown or relinquish a tooth. You instinctively clutch your face like a man caught holding a pie he didn't pay for, which you once were. It was a dark time. There was lemon custard involved. The town doesn't protest. Not at first. Protesting taxes is the sort of thing that leads to public stocks and uncomfortable questions about your lineage. Instead, the people adapt. Mouths become tight-lipped. Chuckles become coughs. The jester is forcibly retired. Children are told bedtime stories about plaque and shame. The dentist becomes revered as a sort of grim oracle. You try not to smile. It is not easy, especially when the miller's goat escapes wearing the vicar's bonnet and no one can laugh. Especially when Bramble, now considered a domestic terrorist after the pudding incident, opens an expressions speakeasy in the back of the stables. Especially when your neighbor tries to pay his tithe with what he insists is joyless licorice and is promptly fined for irony. You try to stay neutral. You try to keep your expressions dry and tax-exempt. But then the baker unveils his newest creation, a walnut nougat twist with a drizzle of something suspiciously golden and possibly blessed. He places it in the window like a dare. It winks at you. You are fairly certain baked goods are not supposed to wink. You press your face into your cloak and mutter a string of safe, neutral syllables. The craving begins that night. It eats at your resolve with molar precision. You start seeing caramel in your dreams. Slow, sticky, authoritative. You dream of taffy that stretches all the way to salvation, and almonds that whisper your name. You wake with a mouthful of your own sleeve and no clear explanation. The black market starts with whispers. The tanner's daughter hands a stranger a paper-wrapped lump in the alley behind the chapel. The stranger walks away chewing. The local weaver begins asking too many questions about gumdrops. Someone drops a jar of candied hazelnuts near the well, and 3 farmers dive on it like it's divine revelation. By the week's end, the sweet trade is booming. Licorice coins, honey tablets passed under loaves. A single butterscotch gets you a night in the good hay. Smiling becomes an act of rebellion. Grinning, treason. You get drawn in one evening when your brother casually slides a chunk of rock-hard nougat across the table and says nothing. It lands with a thud that vibrates your spine. You look at it. You look at him. He nods. You understand. By candlelight, you sample a sliver. It is glorious. It is violence made edible. It is sugar punched into form by someone with theological disagreements. Your mouth cries. Your soul sits up and claps. You smile. The reeve knocks at the door the next morning. "Was that a molar expression I observed at the 3rd hour last night?" he asks. Too calm, too precise. You shake your head. "It was wind," you say. "I was grimacing." Gastrointestinally, he narrows his eyes. You imagine caramel melting in his shoes. He leaves, but not before scratching your name into his book of watchfulness. The cover is made of boiled leather and passive aggression. By now, bartering is the new economy. Candied nuts for shoe repairs. 3 gumdrops for sheep shearing. A single pristine caramel passed hand to hand until it buys a cow. Someone prints a forgery using wax and orange peel. The forger is celebrated, then arrested, then celebrated again. You begin to plan. You need more nougat. The kind from the baker's private stash. The stash he keeps beneath the loose floorboard under the table, where he pretends to read scriptures but actually writes erotic poems about cinnamon. You decide to rob him. Not violently. You're not a monster. Just a gentle nocturnal redistribution of wealth. You wear dark clothes and rub ash on your cheeks for stealth. The ash gets in your mouth. It is not sweet. You regret many choices. The baker's house is unlocked because he's a trusting fool, or possibly baiting you. You slip inside. It smells like almonds and secrets. You tiptoe past the sleeping cat. The cat watches, judging. You bribe it with a sugar cube. You find the stash, wrapped in cloth, hidden beneath false piety. You unwrap it. There at island. The nougat, dense, irregular, potentially explosive. You break off a chunk, just a taste. Time stops. You see stars, or possibly candied figs. You drop your torch. The flame flares. The cat hisses. You panic and sprint, nougat clutched to your chest, the taste still burning on your tongue. You make it home. You chew slowly. You smile. And somewhere, in the darkness, the reeve adds another name to the ledger. The glade is quieter than it has any right to be. The kind of quiet that makes your spine itch and your thoughts louder than usual. There are flowers, yes, bright and humming and suspiciously well organized, but it's the bees that dominate. They orbit in perfect spirals, like they've studied geometry and found it lacking, and now rewrite it with their own logic. You step carefully, unsure if grass in this glade behaves like grass elsewhere, or if it's booby-trapped with pollen-based philosophy. The beekeeper stands at the center like a misplaced saint. His beard is indistinguishable from moss. His robes look stitched from wax. He does not greet you. He does not nod. He lifts a hand slowly and a dozen bees land on it, like obedient thoughts. He stares at them for a long moment before whispering something in a language made entirely of hums. You clear your throat. He doesn't acknowledge it. You try again, louder. Still nothing. Then a bee detaches from his wrist, hovers in front of your face, and bops you on the nose. You get the message. The beekeeper finally turns. His eyes are the color of oversteeped tea. He smiles, just barely, and holds out a small, glistening shape between his fingers. A candy, rough-edged and amber, like a fossilized lie. It pulses faintly, as if remembering a sunrise. You hesitate. He raises an eyebrow and says, very clearly, "Don't chew near the Abbey bell." That's it. That's all the context you're offered. Then he goes back to whispering to his bees, who seem smug in a way that bees shouldn't. You accept the candy. It sticks slightly to your palm, radiating a soft warmth, like it's happy to be wanted. You leave the glade feeling watched. Back in the village, no one wants to hear about the glowing honey candy. They wave you off like someone describing a dream involving a turnip and your cousin's goat. You show them the candy. They narrow their eyes and tell you to go wash your hands. Only Bramble shows interest. He tries to lick the candy while you're distracted. You slap his hand and hide it in your sock. You think about it for days. It glows more at night, faint and pulsing, tucked beneath your pillow where logic cannot reach it. You consider nibbling, just a taste. But the beekeeper's warning was specific. Chewing near the Abbey bell. What counts as near? Physically? Spiritually? You don't ask. You don't know who would answer. One evening, your curiosity overrules your caution. You are young, foolish, and vaguely sticky from an earlier mishap with marmalade. You walk to the edge of the Abbey grounds. The bell tower looms above, noble and mildly resentful. You unwrap the candy. It crackles faintly in the cool air, like it knows what's coming and is embarrassed for you. You pop it in your mouth. The flavor is immediate, overwhelming. Honey, of course, but sharper. Sun-baked clover. Fear. Regret. A strange hint of rosemary and apology. It shatters between your teeth with the sound of a distant confession. You swallow. The bell tolls. You didn't touch it. You didn't even breathe on it. But it tolls anyway, once, heavy and solemn, as if announcing something terrible and deserved. That's when the goose arrives. You do not hear it coming. Geese rarely announce themselves in advance. One moment you are alone. The next, a honking blur of feathers and vengeance barrels toward you like a tax collector with wings. Its eyes are filled with ancient judgment. It wears no collar, no sign of ownership. This goose is freelance. You run. You do not run well. You are still slightly wobbly from the candy. The sweetness lingers on your tongue like a warning. The goose honks again, a sound that translates loosely to, "You brought this upon yourself." You leap a fence. The goose flies over it, of course. You dart into the baker's alley. The goose smashes through a pile of crates like butter through shame. People watch. They do not help. One elderly woman offers you a ladle. You take it. You swing. The goose catches it in its beak and throws it back. You begin to suspect the candy was a test, or a beacon. You reach the glade by pure instinct. The bees rise as one. The goose halts at the edge, hisses, and backs away. Even it knows better than to trespass twice. You collapse at the beekeeper's feet, panting and covered in splinters and shame. He does not speak. He does not smirk. He simply hands you another candy. You do not take it. He shrugs and tucks it away. The bees return to their spirals. The glade hums with secrets you no longer wish to understand. You lie there, face to the sky, wondering what exactly you learned. The bell tolls again in the distance. You flinch. The beekeeper just chuckles, a sound like syrup over gravel, and goes back to whispering to his bees. The idea comes to you in the bath, which is really a bucket, which is really just a barrel you borrowed from the cooper after promising not to fill it with feelings. The water is lukewarm, and your toes resemble old pears, but the inspiration strikes nonetheless. Candied ginger. You've seen the merchant with his sparkling jars. You've heard the whispers about its medicinal uses. You want to make it. You want to master it. You want to eat an entire tray of it while staring out a window and contemplating your enemies. You dry off with a cloth that used to be a curtain and now dreams of better days. You gather your tools. This consists of a pot, a knife, a log of dubious origin, and courage you've mistaken for competence. You find the ginger root in the pantry where you also store pickled fear and that one beet that hums at night. The ginger is knobbly and aggressive, like it grew up fighting. You peel it with something that might be a spoon. It resists. You whisper threats. It yields. You chop it into pieces that vary wildly in size and shape, as if cut by a committee. You light the fire. The fire does not cooperate at first. It huffs. It sighs. It threatens to unionize. Eventually, with enough pleading and a suspicious amount of beeswax, it agrees to be fire again. You place your pot upon it. Water goes in. Ginger goes in. A very confident amount of honey follows. You hum to yourself. You are the alchemist of sweetness, the forge of flavor. Nothing can go wrong. Things go wrong. The honey bubbles too quickly. You add more water. The water boils off. The ginger burns. You panic. You throw in a handful of sugar for balance. The balance is offended. The mixture hisses, blackens, and smokes with the fury of a disgruntled saint. You stir. The spoon gets stuck. You pull. The pot tips. Fire kisses the edge of your tunic. You slap at yourself. You slap at the pot. You slap at an innocent towel hanging nearby. The towel ignites. You stomp on it. Your foot gets sticky. The air is full of ginger and regret. A neighbor yells through the window to ask if you're having a celebratory cookout or an existential crisis. You respond with coughing and a strange, burnt sugar noise. The fire eventually submits to your frantic efforts. Your kitchen is not gone, but it is changed. The walls wear new patterns of soot. The ceiling drips with something you don't want to name. Your pot is fused to the table. The ginger is unrecognizable. You are unrecognizable. You have become a creature of smoke and shame. You collapse on the doorstep, hoping the breeze will carry away the scent of ambition. It doesn't. It carries it directly to your neighbor's house. She appears moments later, wearing an apron that has seen things and holding a small wooden box. Her name is Edla. She once baked a pie so dense it collapsed a bench. You fear and respect her. She sits beside you like you're both waiting for a verdict. She sniffs the air and nods solemnly. You tried ginger, she says. It is not a question. You nod. It didn't try back, you reply. She hums in sympathy. From the box, she produces something wrapped in waxed cloth and consequences. Burnt sugar fudge, she says, as if this explains anything. She tears a chunk and offers it to you. It is dark, dense, and faintly glimmers in the Sunday you hesitate. She raises an eyebrow in a way that implies the fudge is not optional. You take it. The first bite is confusion. The second is betrayal. The third, because you are weak, is revelation. It tastes like every mistake you've ever made, caramelized and condensed into a cube of molten therapy. Smoke, spice, memory. A faint suggestion of nutmeg and emotional closure. You feel yourself float a little, just above the ground, not quite levitating, but definitely hovering in a way that concerns birds. Edla watches you chew like a scientist observing a toad grow wings. You try to thank her, but your mouth is occupied with molten penance. She pats your shoulder with the tenderness of someone who has also once lit their pantry on fire trying to flambe raisins. The fudge finishes you, not physically, but spiritually. You are no longer the person who entered this day with goals. You are wiser now, slightly singed. You vow never to touch ginger again unless it apologizes in writing. You consider joining a monastery. Later, as you scrape what remains of your candied dreams off the floor with a spatula and a prayer, you wonder why anyone tries to cook at all. You wonder how the sugar merchant does it without summoning demons. You wonder if you can get more of Edla's fudge without appearing desperate. You chew the thought. It tastes like smoke, and maybe the sign is nailed crookedly to the old oak in the center of the square. It reads, Taff Fi Pull, Sunset, Bring Hands, and nothing else, as if elaboration would be dangerous. A chicken has pecked off part of the Y, so it now reads more like taffy pull. Sunset. Bring hands. And you briefly wonder if Hans is involved. He Island. Hans is always involved. You see him polishing his wrists in preparation. By midday, the square is full of hopefuls and the sort of tension that only arises when sugar is on the line. The long table creaks under the weight of potential. Aunt Morla is already loosening her shoulders like she's preparing for blood sport. You have wrapped your sleeves up to your elbows and said a small prayer to whatever god oversees caramel-based combat. The air smells of boiled sugar, resolve, and old boots. You have trained for this moment in no way whatsoever. You did once twist a loaf of bread so aggressively it exploded, and someone said your hands had taffy potential. You don't know what that means. You assume it was either a compliment or a warning. Either way, you are here now, barefoot and sticky in spirit. The taffy is unveiled by the miller's daughter, who has eyes like justice and a ladle that has never lost a fight. The taffy gleams. It is pale, glossy, coiled in a vat the size of a child's coffin. It pulses, very slightly, like it's listening. You pretend not to notice. Everyone lines up. Gloves are optional. Regret is not. Someone rings the church bell once, not for ceremony but for timing, and the contest begins. The first pull is warm and wrong. The taffy stretches but fights back. It wraps around your wrists with the intimacy of an old lover and the malice of a taxman. You yank. It yanks harder. You grunt, brace your legs, and heave like a farmer birthing a reluctant calf. Across the table, Hans is doing something elegant and terrible with his forearms, like a confectioner's waltz. The taffy likes him. You can tell. You hate Hans. Aunt Morla snarls and pulls hers like she's revenging a family curse. Her taffy makes a sound like a dying accordion. Brambles has fused to his beard. A child screams as theirs whips off the table and slaps a passing goat. The goat does not forgive. You redouble your efforts. There's a rhythm to it. Eventually, pull, twist, fold, curse, pull again. The taffy softens but grows longer, slicker, more aware. It begins to glisten in ways that suggest it has secrets. Someone mutters that they saw it blink. No one denies it. The sun begins to set, and your arms are no longer your own. They belong to the taffy now. Hans loses a glove. You see it fly upward like a white dove fleeing a crime scene. It spins, then lands in the well. You hope it's symbolic of something. He doesn't flinch. His hand is red and raw, and possibly no longer technically a hand. He grins. You panic. Your own taffy is now looping in circles. You try to untwist it. It retaliates. It wraps itself around your middle, then up your neck, and briefly you see your life flash before your eyes in candied vignettes. You almost drown in sugar. You emerge with purpose. The crowd is breathless. This is the best entertainment they've had since the donkey fight ended in scandal. The taffy glows in the twilight. It stretches between you and Hans like fate or a very sweet noose. You pull. He pulls. Something snaps. A sound echoes out, high-pitched and holy. The taffy rips straight through the middle, flings backward, and slaps Hans full in the face. He topples like a disgraced knight. You raise your half like a trophy. It dangles. It drips. You are victorious and deeply unclean. There is no prize. There never island. The villagers simply nod solemnly and drift away into the evening, murmuring about technique and legacy, and whether that was really taffy or something older. You sit on the well and try to breathe. Your hands are ruined. Your palms glisten with sugar and sweat and spiritual damage. You dip them into the bucket. It doesn't help. The water turns cloudy. The chickens avoid you. You are too sticky for redemption. Later, you find flecks of taffy in your hair, on your socks, inside your pocket, where you never even reached. Your fingers smell like old dreams. The miller's daughter passes you on the path and nods. It's always like this, she says, though no one remembers when the last contest was. You nod back. You do not speak. You fear the taffy will hear. That night, you cannot sleep. Your arms twitch with phantom pulls. Your dreams are strung with long, endless strands of sweetness that stretch into the stars. One wraps around the moon. You wake up tangled in your bed sheets, gasping and slightly caramelized. You try to scrub your hands with vinegar and lie. You try soap, dirt, sand, regret. Nothing works. The stickiness remains. It is a part of you now. The suitor's name is Tolan, or something like that. It might be Breg. You aren't sure. Because you've never actually heard him speak a full sentence that doesn't begin with, "My uncle owns 3 goats," and end with, "So technically I'm nobility." He has a chin like an overbaked scone, and the gait of a man who never lost a fight, but definitely lost several arguments with puddles. Still, he has kind eyes, or at least eyes, and this morning he presents you with a gift wrapped in burlap and bound with a length of twine that smells faintly of sheep. Inside is a stick of rock candy shaped like a heart. Technically, the top of the heart is chipped, possibly by accident, possibly by intention, and one side appears to be sharper than a small knife used in family betrayals. It sparkles in the sun, all crystal and menace, pink like a blushing blade. You say thank you in the way people say thank you when they don't know where to put their hands. He beams, unaware of how close you are to needing a bandage. You are not sure what to do with it. Rock candy is not common here, not since the molasses rationing of 3 winters ago. Its presence suggests smuggling, or at least a distant aunt in a far-off duchy with poor decision-making skills. You are not going to eat it, obviously. It smells like regret. And cloves. You nod again, awkwardly. Tolan shifts his weight and tries to lean on a fence post that is not there. His hand meets air. He recovers with a noise like a goat doing algebra. You watch him leave, candy heart glinting ominously in your hand. The gift is romantic in the same way a thunderstorm is cleansing. You feel honored and slightly in danger. You try to carry it gently. You do. You cradle it in your arms for exactly 20 steps before it stabs your wrist. Not deeply, just enough to remind you that sweetness has a cost. You wrap it in a sock. Then you put the sock in your boot. This seems logical at the time. By midday, your limp is noticeable. It garners comments. The old fishmonger gives you a knowing nod and says, "Ah, romance," with the tone of someone who once courted a barmaid with a jawbreaker and now lives alone with a one-eyed cat. You smile through the pain and adjust your stride to favor the leg not harboring a sugar dagger. You try to forget it's there. You milk the goat. You churn the butter. You forget, briefly, until you kick a bucket and nearly weep in public. The boot is not forgiving. The rock candy presses against your ankle bone like a love letter written with a nail. That night, you soak your foot in vinegar and secrecy. The rock candy, now slightly sticky and definitely more dangerous, sits on your windowsill and judges you under the moonlight. You consider throwing it out. You consider framing it. You consider marrying it, if only to gain dominion over its intentions. The next day, Tolan approaches again, this time carrying a posy of what might be flowers or might be weeds with aspirations. He asks if you like the candy. You say yes, while limping noticeably. He grins. You do not. There is a silence in which he possibly imagines you both sharing a picnic or a future, or a crumbling stone cottage full of children and aggressively sharp sweets. You imagine him stepping on a thistle. You offer him a seat beside you on the bench. He accepts. The bench is too small for the weight of unsaid things. You speak of the weather. He speaks of goats. The candy hums quietly, still in your boot, still drawing small patterns of affection into your skin with every movement. Eventually, he takes your hand. It is calloused, and his is damp. You hold it anyway, because people are like that, rough and strange and not quite ready. He squeezes once, like a promise or a warning. You get up to leave and forget to adjust for the limp. The rock candy jabs you so sharply you see a flash of your own childhood. Tolan helps you up. He thinks it's a moment. It might be. You think you might have lost feeling in 2 toes. Later, when the sun is a ghost on the horizon and your foot has become a throbbing memory, you remove the candy from your boot. It is slightly melted, slightly bloodied, and still unmistakably heart-shaped. You place it on the shelf above your bed, between the beet spoon and the dried frog that keeps away nightmares. You stare at it a while. Love, you realize, is just pain with frosting. The baker unveils it on a foggy morning, when the sun seems reluctant to participate in the day. He does not announce it with fanfare or banners or even a bell, which he usually rings for lesser achievements like inventing triangular bread or surviving another Wednesday. No, this time he merely places a tray on the counter and stands behind it with the solemn expression of a man unveiling the bones of a saint. The tray glistens with slivers of something dark, glossy, and profoundly foreboding. The air smells of anise and daring. He calls it black licorice, though you suspect its true name is older and less pronounceable, possibly whispered in caves by damp monks. The pieces are twisted like rope used to bind a prophecy. One of them shifts slightly, as though breathing. You blink. It doesn't happen again. Probably. No one asked for this. That much is certain. The village barely tolerates molasses, and licorice root is generally regarded as a plant best left to goats and uncles who claim to enjoy the taste of old boots. Yet here at Island, a new candy, proudly continental, according to the baker, who says the recipe came from a traveling spice merchant with suspiciously few teeth and a story about a storm that whispered instructions. You try to smile. You fail. The baker slices a piece for you with a small knife that has clearly seen other, more violent purposes. He offers it on a scrap of parchment like it's sacred or cursed. You take it. Your hand trembles slightly, which he mistakes for excitement. It is soft, but not. It yields to your teeth the way a lie does, slowly and with resistance. The flavor arrives late and then all at once, like a tax. It is bitter, then sweet, then bitter again in a way that feels accusatory. It tastes like soil and judgment, like the afterthought of a burnt sermon. You swallow out of respect for your ancestors. Your tongue recoils. Your mouth wonders what it did to deserve this. The baker watches you with hopeful intensity, as if you might validate years of strange decisions and lone experiments. You manage a noise that isn't quite a compliment, but isn't a complaint either. He nods. He tells you it's good for digestion, bad humors, and possibly haunting prevention. You believe at least one of those things is true. You leave the bakery feeling less like a person and more like a riddle disguised as a wheelbarrow. Your steps are uneven. Your name has left your mind and returned backwards. You are now near Chtil, apparently. The village pond doesn't recognize you. Neither does the goat. You sit by the well and contemplate your decisions. The licorice clings to your teeth, and also, it seems, your memories. You recall a winter long ago where you licked bark on a dare. This is worse. The flavor refuses to fade. It evolves. It begins to unpack boxes and decorate. You wonder if this is the rest of your life. A child runs past you, chewing something suspiciously black and giggling like someone who's seen a future they can't escape. His mother looks concerned but says nothing. A dog licks a dropped piece and immediately buries its own face in the mud for comfort. The clouds grow darker. Or maybe your eyes do. You visit the apothecary to ask if licorice poisoning is real. He offers you a tincture that smells like betrayal and says, "That's what you get for trying to be adventurous." You drink it. It doesn't help. Your tongue now tastes like both licorice and regret, layered like a disappointing trifle. Later, You return to the bakery because you are a glutton for consequences, and possibly because the licorice has colonized your thoughts and is steering your legs. The baker greets you with the serene smile of a man who has already made peace with his culinary crimes. He offers you another piece. You decline in 3 languages and a facial twitch. He chuckles like a man who owns the moon. Behind him, another tray rests beneath a cloth. You ask what's under it. He says, something even more sophisticated. You don't ask further. You don't want to know. You're not ready for fennel clusters or cinnamon despair lozenges. You nod slowly, then walk backwards out the door. That night, you try to sleep. The licorice visits you, not in dreams. Dreams are too kind, but in thoughts that wander through your mind like poorly trained goats. You hear whispers in a dialect of flavor that your mouth now understands. You wake in a cold sweat with a craving you don't recognize and a need to scrub your teeth with fire. The next morning, the baker sells out of licorice. Apparently, it's catching on. People claim it's an acquired taste, which is what they always say before starting cults or cabbage diets. You consider moving to a different village. You consider eating more, just to see if surrender helps. You consider everything and nothing, and brushing your tongue with salt. You pass the bakery window. There's a new sign. Coming soon, salted birch confections. You shudder. You chew a leaf to forget. It doesn't work. Nothing works. You are nearch till now, and you know the taste of vengeance. You find it on your doorstep wrapped in waxed cloth and tied with a piece of red thread, which means it is either a gift or a curse or a strangely festive warning. You peel the wrapping back with the caution of someone who's received 3 unrelated frogs this month and 1 eel that came with instructions. Inside sits a small hedgehog, marzipan, allegedly. Its tiny almond eyes peer up at you with the blank intensity of something molded by shaky hands and unclear emotions. You stare at it for a while, unsure whether to thank someone or contact the town warden. It smells like sugar and nostalgia, with faint hints of regret and raw almond. The creature's face is lopsided, its spine sculpted with more ambition than talent. There's something off about its posture, like it's trying to curl up into a ball but has forgotten how knees work. It wobbles slightly in your palm, though it does not move. Probably. You carry it inside, where it promptly becomes the centerpiece of your table, displacing a bowl of overly dried plums and your dignity. On the first day, you name it Sir Crunchingdon. This feels correct. You do not eat it. You do not know why. There is something fundamentally inappropriate about biting into a creature with such an earnest little frown. You place it beside your bread, then your bed, then on the windowsill, where it seems to glower disapprovingly at passers-by. A child waves. The marzipan does not wave back. You are not sure what you expected. On the second day, you try to give it to your aunt. She looks at it, then at you, then at the sky, as if asking for divine clarification. She declines politely and offers you a turnip. You accept the turnip out of shame. The hedgehog goes back to the windowsill, where it continues to silently judge. You consider biting off the nose, just to establish dominance, but the thought makes your stomach churn. You're not even sure it's safe to eat anymore. The sun has touched it. The dust has whispered secrets to it. It's part of your household now. You can't just eat your household. Not again. On the third day, the priest passes through the village square in a procession of 1, dragging a wheelbarrow full of damp hymnals. He is humming something that sounds suspiciously like tavern music slowed to a crawl. You approach him with the hedgehog wrapped once more in its cloth, unsure if this is a confession or an offering. The priest eyes the shape in your hands with the weary recognition of someone who's seen too many poorly formed edible animals in his time. He unwraps it. His face does not change. He nods solemnly and mutters a blessing that includes the words, confectionery burden, and deliver us from almond paste. Then, without hesitation, he bites off the head. The sound is surprisingly loud. The priest chews slowly, thoughtfully. He swallows, clears his throat, and says, "Tastes like penance." You nod. He walks away. You stand in the square, holding the decapitated body of Sir Crunchington, and feel nothing. Not guilt, not relief, not even curiosity. It is simply over. Your marzipan chapter has concluded, headless and unresolved. You return home, uncertain what to do with the rest of the body. It sits in your cupboard for a week before being eaten by a visiting rat who later walks into a trap with a strangely smug expression. Later, you ask around to see if anyone else received a marzipan creature. Old Berta says she got a fox. It melted on her windowsill, and now her curtains smell like almonds and melancholy. The blacksmith received a goose. He bit into it too quickly and cracked a molar. He hasn't smiled since. The miller claims his was a bear, but it looked more like a lump with eyes. No one knows who's making them. No one wants to find out. There are rumors, of course, that a widow on the hill lost her sense of proportion and found solace in almond art, that the baker's apprentice is training in secret, guided by dreams and poorly translated recipes from a southern scroll, that the marzipan figures are sentient and sculpting themselves in the dead of night, emerging from sacks of crushed nut like terrible, adorable revenants. You try not to think about it. Weeks pass. The priest begins giving sermons with a strange glint in his eye. He refers to sweet salvation and the bite of divine judgment. You avoid his gaze. You avoid marzipan. You start chewing on pine bark just to feel something real. One morning, you find a tiny marzipan snail nestled in your shoe. Its shell is intricately swirled, its eyes perfectly round. You sigh. You eat it without blinking. It tastes like closure. A shriek pierces the morning calm, which in this village means the rooster has already declared war on the sun, and the baker is arguing with his own chimney again. But this shriek is new. It has velocity. It is followed by the unmistakable sound of something wooden, surrendering to its own structural flaws, and then the slow, meaty thud of vegetables scattering in a manner both tragic and triumphant. You arrive in the square just in time to see the cart tip the last of its dignity into the dust. Sugar beets roll in every direction like oddly confident cannonballs. The wheels creak their final protest before one of them detaches entirely and spins away toward the thatcher's hut, where it will cause a minor existential crisis and 2 splinters. The driver, a man of dubious mustache and long-standing vendetta against gravity, throws up his hands and declares it divine punishment for harboring false sweetness. No one asks what that means. The town has agreed, silently and collectively, not to encourage him. The children descend first. They emerge from wells, thatched roofs, hay bales, and one suspiciously lumpy pig. One child is already chewing on a beet the size of his head. His eyes are glazed with purpose and dirt. Another child cradles a particularly bulbous specimen like it's a sacred relic, whispering to it in tones only dogs and mild deities can hear. The adults, having had more time to regret their choices, arrive next. They do not so much descend as hover cautiously, like bees unsure of the flower's consent. One man prods a beet with a stick and sniffs it. A woman insists loudly that this is how the last famine started. The blacksmith says nothing, but begins peeling one with his tongs. It's unclear if he's planning to eat it or forge with it. You pick one up. It's cold and dense and smells like a root, trying very hard to be appreciated. Someone hands you a shard of a broken bowl. You use it as a knife. It works poorly but makes you feel prepared. The first bite is fibrous. The second is rebellious. By the third, your teeth ache and your tongue feels like it's been exiled from joy. The taste is faintly sweet, in the way a memory is faintly sharp. You chew thoughtfully. It is the flavor of dirt with aspirations, like a potato that has read poetry, like a carrot's disowned cousin, like someone tried to convince a turnip to audition for dessert, and it agreed out of peer pressure. You do not spit it out. You are too proud. You are also too confused. Around you, chaos simmers. A woman tries to juice a beet using an old wine press. It does not go well. The beet refuses. It splits in half with a soggy pop and sprays something pink and accusatory onto her face. She cries, not out of pain but betrayal. The candlemaker attempts to roast one over a torch. The resulting smell clears a 10-foot radius and causes the apothecary's goat to faint. A friar from the abbey tries to baptize a particularly round beet in the well. He insists it may be a sign, possibly a relic, possibly a mistake. The water bubbles slightly in protest. The beet floats. A child screams. The friar shrugs and takes it home. Someone tries to trade 3 sugar beets for a kiss. The offer is declined with speed and historical emphasis. Someone else fashions a necklace from beet slices and immediately begins attracting bees. A third person attempts to juggle them, but forgets about gravity and bruises a baker. You watch it all with the slow, sinking realization that the village may never fully recover from this. Not spiritually, not olfactorily. By midday, the square is a battlefield of half-eaten beets and emotional damage. Children nap beside their trophies. Adults wander off, muttering about fiber. The man with the mustache sits on the ruins of his cart and sings a love song to a beet he has named Marjorie. You do not make eye contact. You take another bite. It is not better. It is, somehow, worse. You think you detect a new flavor. Regret. With undertones of compost. An old woman who hasn't spoken in weeks taps your shoulder and hands you a parchment square of something amber and waxy. She says nothing, just gestures. You chew obediently. It is beet candy, or at least beet adjacent. Sweetened with honey and confusion, it sticks to your molars like a grudge. It tastes like someone tried, and failed, and kept trying anyway. You thank her. She vanishes behind a barrel. By evening, the beets are mostly gone. Eaten, buried, adopted, or quietly hidden under floorboards. The wheelbarrow is repaired. The mustached man has wandered into the woods with Marjorie. No one stops him. Your stomach makes sounds like medieval theology. You sit on a step and sip well water, which now tastes faintly of beet or remorse, or both. A child offers you a slice of candied root in the shape of a duck. You accept. It is chewy. It tastes like ambition. You do not cry. You just wait for your teeth to forgive you. The cobbler's shop smells like leather, smoke, and one of the stranger sins. You step inside and immediately trip over a boot that looks like it's been chewed by time itself. Somewhere under the warped table is the cobbler, horizontal, snoring like he's offended the gods of breath and they've taken it personally. You consider whether he's dead or just dramatically asleep again. You nudge him with the toe of your shoe, which he made 6 summers ago and which now squeaks ominously whenever you approach geese. He doesn't stir. Beside him sits the sugar loaf. It is nestled in a cracked bowl that might once have held soup or shame or both. The loaf is wrapped in twine, clumsily tied like someone was halfway through the knot when they remembered they no longer believed in order. It glistens faintly, not with sugar, but with possibility. It looks too fancy to be in this shop, and not fancy enough to be anywhere else. You squat beside it, like it's an altar or a trap. No one has claimed it. There is no note. They're never island. You look at the cobbler. His mouth is open. A fly exits with what feels like purpose. You look at the loaf again. The twine is frayed, the paper oily, the shape uneven, as if the sugar gave up on geometry halfway through forming. You lean in. You smell wax, maybe lard, and something that might be cinnamon or old furniture. Your stomach makes a quiet sound of betrayal. You taste it. It does not resist your bite so much as consider it and allow you entry. The first crunch is brittle, like biting into a candlestick that's seen things. The sweetness is slow, almost philosophical. It tastes like regret, but the kind you learn from. Like if someone tried to make dessert from melancholy and good intentions. You chew slowly. You are not sure it is food. You are also not sure it isn't. It is the kind of sweetness that lingers, not on your tongue, but in your memories. You have the brief, dizzying sensation of being 8 years old, sitting in a barrel during a hailstorm, eating a stolen plum, and waiting for judgment. You swallow. The sensation does not leave. It turns a corner in your chest and takes up residence. You leave 1 copper on the floor near the bowl. You do not know if it's payment, apology, or offering. Outside, the light seems different, sharper around the edges. You blink at the sky, which looks the same but feels like it's watching you now. A child waves. You wave back, too slowly. You walk home as though the ground might melt if you step too confidently. You can still taste the sugar on your teeth, like a secret. That night, your dreams are unusually linear. You're in a hallway with too many doors, each one labeled in a language you've never seen but instinctively understand. You open one. A goose is sitting at a desk, writing something with a quill made from your own hair. It looks up. You wake up. Your hands are warm. You go to the basin and splash water on your face. The water hisses faintly. You check your reflection. It glows, just a little, not dramatically, not in a way that suggests sainthood or infection, but enough that when you turn your head, the outline lingers, like heat, like candlelight, like an afterthought of the Sunday. You return to the cobbler's shop the next day. He's still under the table, possibly in a different position, though you'd need sketches to be sure. The sugar loaf is gone. So is the copper. In its place is a button. You don't remember losing a button. You don't remember owning anything with buttons. You take it anyway. You feel like you're supposed to. You ask the cobbler if he knows anything about the sugar loaf. He groans and says something that might be left foot or eggplant. You thank him, because either way, it feels like closure. Over the next few days, strange things begin to happen. Your candle lasts twice as long. You find a ribbon in your pocket that you know for a fact burned in the fire last year. Your neighbor swears she saw you walking near the river at midnight, humming a tune she hasn't heard since childhood. You were not near the river. You were asleep, or trying to be. Your bed had grown warm and cold in alternating waves, like tides made of linens and whispers. You tell no one about the sugar loaf, not because you're ashamed, not because you fear consequences, but because you know they won't understand. You wouldn't, either. Your teeth feel stronger. Your fingernails grow straighter. You haven't sneezed in a week. You return to the cobbler's shop again. This time, he's sitting upright, eating a boiled egg with reverence. He looks at you and nods once, like you've both survived something sacred and stupid. You ask him, casually, where he got the sugar loaf. He grins with most of his teeth. Found it, he says, inside a boot I was repairing. No idea how long it was in there. Still good. You nod. You try to laugh. It comes out like a confession. You walk home again, slower this time. The sun feels heavier, but kinder. A bird lands on your shoulder and leaves something in your hair. It's not quite a feather. You do not remove it. That night, when you lie in bed, your breath smells faintly of wax and memory, and you glow, just a little. You enter the apothecary's shop with the kind of caution reserved for damp cellars, questionable relatives, and medicinal jam. The air smells like crushed petals and distant thunder. On the wall, a series of dried herbs hang in solemn judgment. A jar labeled Powdered Regret winks at you from the shelf. You do not wink back. The apothecary appears from behind a curtain with a flourish, as though he was not napping on a pile of moss 2 seconds ago. His hat is shaped like a misunderstanding, tall and tilted with a feather that might once have belonged to something majestic, now simply confused. You tell him you're here for love. He does not blink. He nods as though he's been expecting you since the hour of your birth and has judged you mildly but fairly. He produces a vial. It's shaped like temptation and filled with something golden and thick, swirling lazily as if it has no interest in being rushed. The label reads, "Sweet elixir for wooing. Results may vary. Goats not included." You raise an eyebrow. He raises both. You hand him 2 copper coins and a button shaped like a frog. He nods solemnly. The transaction is complete. You are told to use only 3 drops. You do not ask why. You forget to ask what happens if you use 4. The shepherd is not your first choice, or your second. He's the only one standing still long enough and not currently engaged in yelling at soup. His name might be Harl or Harp, or possibly just a noise the sheep made once. He has kind eyes and smells like wool and ambition. That seems enough. You invite him to sit beside you on the mossy log near the old mill. You offer him a cup of tea and slip in exactly 3 drops. Then a 4th, because it jiggles out too fast and you're not a monster. You won't waste it. He accepts the cup with the solemn grace of someone who has no idea what's coming and may never again. He drinks. He blinks. He sneezes hard enough to startle a nearby robin into theological crisis. Then he looks at you with sudden intensity and says, "Will you marry me, flower girl?" He hesitates on the title. You forgive him, mostly because your name is not something he's ever had to learn until now. You smile. He smiles. A goat appears from nowhere and begins chewing on your sleeve. The moment does not last. He shakes his head like a man emerging from a dream about soup and questionable life choices. He stares at the cup, then at you, then at the goat. His face folds into an apology. He says he has to return to the sheep before they form a union. He leaves you with the goat. The goat does not leave. The goat's name is evidently Marmalade. You did not choose this. It is written on a small wooden tag tied to its neck with string. You accept this fate like a person being handed a wet towel by destiny. You return to the apothecary, Marmalade trailing behind you like guilt. The shop smells stronger this time, like sage and seasonal resentment. You set the vial back on the counter. The apothecary does not ask questions. He simply takes it, sets it on a different shelf, labeled Returns, and hands you a wrapped candy that smells faintly of apology. You unwrap it slowly. It's chewy and tastes like honey, cloves, and something that reminds you of a warm hand on your shoulder during last winter's frost. You do not say thank you. He does not say you're welcome. It is understood. Outside, Marmalade headbutts a fence post and sneezes. You realize this is the same sneeze the shepherd had, only with more conviction. You wonder if goats are part of the potion's long-term side effects. You wonder if you've inherited her. You wonder if love potions ever expire or just ferment. You spend the afternoon trying to return the goat. The shepherd is nowhere to be found. His sheep stare at you with passive judgment, like librarians who have seen too much. You try tying Marmalade to the fence. She unties herself. You try leaving her outside the tavern. She finds you again before you've finished your cider. You name her loyalty, then you name her burden. Then you stop naming her altogether. By evening, she's chewed a hole in your cloak and licked the last of the potion from the hem of your sleeve. You don't stop her. You're not even sure who's enchanted anymore. You light a candle at home and sit beside the hearth, Marmalade curled at your feet like a furry rumor. You think about love and sweetness, and how both are often wrapped in things far too sticky to unravel cleanly. You think about the shepherd's eyes when he forgot your face. You think about how easy it is to want something to work, and how hard it is to admit when it doesn't. The goat farts. You open a window. The air smells like honeysuckle and confusion. Later that night, you find a scrap of parchment under your door. It reads, "Love cannot be bottled, but it can be borrowed." There is no signature, just a small drawing of a bee and a spoon. You pin it to your wall and stare at it for longer than you mean to. You never see the shepherd again, though you do hear rumors he eloped with a cheesemonger's apprentice who smells like almonds. You wish them well. You hope they sneeze together often. Marmalade stays. You do not question it anymore. You grow used to the sounds she makes in the dark, and the way she follows you with a gaze too intelligent for comfort. Sometimes you catch her staring at the apothecary's door. You understand. The tavern smells like spilled ale and stories that shouldn't be retold. The air is thick with pipe smoke, bad decisions, and the faint tang of yesterday's stew, which may still be arguing with someone in the corner. You walk in like a question mark with legs, unsure what you're asking for, but certain you'll regret the answer. You approach the bar, where the bartender is polishing a mug with a cloth so dirty it might qualify as a minor god of filth. He glances up with the expression of a man who's seen things he refuses to process without strong drink and possibly an exorcism. You ask for something sweet. You say it casually, like you haven't spent the last 3 days chewing bark and wondering if molasses is just tree sap with ambition. The bartender pauses. His eyebrows rise. Then he laughs. It starts as a chuckle and builds into a wheeze that rattles dust from the beams. A man at the end of the bar starts coughing in sympathetic rhythm. A stool creaks in protest. The laughter only stops when the bartender remembers he's mortal. He reaches below the counter and slams down a jar with the finality of Judgment Day. It is glass, old, and slightly cloudy, like the memory of a happier time. Inside are objects that may have once been fruit, but now resemble something exiled from botany and hope. He calls them sugar plums, but you suspect lies, or irony, or possibly both. The lid creaks open like an ancient curse. You peer inside. The plums, or what you assume are plums, are wrinkled, sticky, and look like they've had a hard life. You select one with the careful reverence usually reserved for explosives. It squelches. You bite. It is not sweet, not in any modern or legal sense. It tastes like fermented decisions and the memory of spice. There is a hint of clove, a whisper of cinnamon, and a long, bitter afterthought that clings to the roof of your mouth like emotional baggage. You nod solemnly. You order another. This time the plum fights back. Your teeth sink in and the flesh resists, like it's trying to warn you. You chew. It chews back. Somewhere behind your eyes, a headache begins to form. You swallow anyway. The bartender watches with curiosity, the way one might observe someone attempting to befriend a badger. He pours himself a drink and raises it in your honor. You raise your sticky fingers back. It feels like initiation. Around you, the tavern continues its slow collapse into legend. A man is whispering secrets to a spoon. A woman sharpens a butter knife with the intensity of someone expecting war and toast. A goat in a scarf stares through the window, possibly judging you, possibly just bored. You pop another sugar plum into your mouth. This one tastes slightly better, like it's closer to its original purpose. Or maybe you're just acclimating to disappointment. You start to feel a warmth in your belly, a heat not from the hearth but from something deeper, older, possibly haunted. It spreads like treacle and poor life choices. You ask where the sugar plums came from. The bartender shrugs and says, "They've always been here." You're not sure if he means the plums or the jar or the existential dread that now lives behind your teeth. You do not press. You order a third. This one cracks. There's a pit inside, dry and hollow, like an apology that's been used too many times. You roll it between your fingers, wondering if it's still edible or if it will curse your descendants. You put it in your pocket. You already have a cursed button in there. They can keep each other company. A bard starts singing near the fire, his voice like honey in gravel. The song is about a woman who fell in love with a candied fig and died happy, or maybe just died. You aren't fluent in bard. The sugar plum catches in your throat. You wash it down with something brown and dangerous that the bartender insists is beer but might legally qualify as paint thinner. The world begins to blur at the edges. Your limbs are warm. Your thoughts are soft. The sugar plums are working their magic, or possibly just fermenting in real time inside your gut. You stare at the jar. The plums stare back. You ask for one to go. The bartender hands you a small waxed cloth and 3 shriveled orbs of questionable morality. You thank him. He grunts. It's the closest thing to affection you'll get from a man who once bit a wasp on a dare. Outside, the wind is sharp and full of opinions. The sky is the color of spilled ink. You walk slowly, plums in hand, uncertain whether you've been nourished or hexed. Marmalade the goat follows, her scarf now slightly askew. You suspect she's been in the meat again. Back home, you set the plums on your table. You stare at them. They stare back. You eat one. It is no better. It is no worse. It is what it is. A sweetness too stubborn to die, too bitter to be trusted, too old to care. You understand. The toothsmith arrives on a Tuesday, which is the worst day for omens and public screaming. His cart is painted the color of dried blood and optimism. It creaks into the square with the smugness of a cat who has both secrets and leverage. A wind follows him. It smells faintly of cloves and unresolved dental trauma. He steps down like a man who has never tripped in public, and never will. His boots are polished to a shine that suggests sorcery or beeswax borrowed from the bishop. His cloak billows unnecessarily. His hat is a crown made entirely of peppermints, set at a rakish angle that implies he flosses for sport. The villagers pretend not to notice him. They notice him. You notice him. He is, unfortunately, extremely noticeable. He carries a bag slung over one shoulder. It jingles, not pleasantly. The jingle is the sound of lost battles between enamel and sugar. You're sure it contains tools, bones, or possibly unsent letters to molars. On the side of the cart, in faded gold paint, is a sign that reads, Dr. Gulliford P. Chomp, toothsmith and sweet mentalist. Extractions, elegance, enlightenment. You have no idea what a sweet mentalist island. You're not sure he does either. He begins to set up a small wooden stool and a folding signboard with the air of a man who plans to remove something from someone, whether they ask for it or not. He places a jar of barley candy on the edge of the cart, letting the sun catch it so it gleams like honey trapped in guilt. A child approaches and is waved away gently, like a fly, but with more consequence. You linger near the well, pretending to check the rope tension. You are checking nothing. You are watching the peppermint-crowned menace in case he makes a move toward your teeth. A woman asks him the price of a peppermint. He smiles. His teeth are perfect, too perfect, like they were cast from ivory and vanity. He offers her one for free. She declines. He nods once and goes back to sharpening something metal and unkind. At noon he rings a bell. The sound is soft, clear, and somehow accusatory. He declares his first extraction of the day will be in honor of the harvest and the sins of the molar. You don't know what that means. You hope you never find out. A man named Pevin volunteers. He's always had more confidence than teeth. He climbs onto the stool like it's a throne of consequence. The toothsmith gives him a barley candy. It is pale gold and suspiciously sticky. Pevin sucks on it bravely for 3 seconds before his eyes widen. The toothsmith leans in with a glint in his eye and asks, "Shall I?" Pevin tries to nod, but the candy is fused to something critical. The toothsmith produces a hooked tool, and something that may have once been a spoon, but now resembles an accusation. He begins. There is no scream at first. There is only tension, and then a sharp yelp that slides up into a note so high the birds fall silent. Children gasp. An old man drops his turnip. You feel something in your jaw twitch in sympathy. The scream continues, looping through 3 distinct emotional phases before it softens into a sigh that could be either relief or mild haunting. Pevin slides off the stool, dazed, 1 tooth lighter and 1 barley candy richer. He walks in a circle and mutters something about angels and cheese. You turn to leave. You are not next. You have done nothing to deserve this. But the toothsmith sees you. He winks. It is not a flirtatious wink. It is the wink of a man who knows where your cavities live. You stiffen. nod politely, and walk directly into a chicken. The chicken is unimpressed. It pecks your boot and walks away. You do the same. At supper, no one talks about it, but everyone chews slightly to the left. The baker eats soup. The blacksmith drinks mead and stares at a spoon for too long. The priest blesses a bundle of parsley and claims it is prophylactic. You gnaw your bread slowly and with deliberation. You consider soaking it in cider. You consider never eating again. Later that evening, someone screams again. It comes from the alley behind the granary. It is short, musical, and very, very sad. You do not investigate. You tighten your scarf, check your teeth with your tongue, and quietly light a candle for your molars. One flickers. That night, you dream of peppermint wheels turning endlessly in a sky made of enamel. The stars are fillings. The moon is a wisdom tooth. It whispers secrets you forget upon waking, but you wake with the vague sense that your smile has been judged. The toothsmith remains in town 3 more days. He never eats. He hands out barley candies with quiet menace. A man claims they make your mouth holy. A woman says they taste like remorse. One child licks one and promptly swears off sweetness for life. He joins the monastery the next day. You visit the market. You do not smile. You do not chew. You look at the jars of preserved fruits and wonder if any of them are soft enough to live. You buy a boiled pear and call it a luxury. On the 4th morning, the cart is gone. No one saw him leave. No one admits to being glad. The square is quieter. There are fewer plums at the tavern. The town goat, normally aggressive, seems contemplative. You open your cupboard and stare at the barley candy the toothsmith slipped into your coat pocket. You did not ask for it. You do not know when he gave it to you. It gleams in the morning sun, golden and smug. You put it in the back of the drawer, behind the dried sage and the jar of questionable jam. You close the drawer. You lock it. The cathedral is colder than it should be. The stones sweat history and faint ecclesiastical regret. You are wearing your second-best tunic, the one without the jam stain shaped like a heron, because this is a holy event and appearances matter, even if your shoes still smell faintly of beet syrup. The air inside is heavy with incense, mildew, and the quiet crunch of anticipation. A feast is promised, a feast in honor of Saint Frangipan, patron of sweetness, bees, and toothaches. You are skeptical, but you are also hungry. Candles flicker like gossip. The long wooden tables sag gently in the middle, under the weight of half-familiar foods disguised as celebration. A procession of novices hums a vaguely threatening hymn while balancing trays of pickled something. You sit near the back, between a man who claims to be descended from licorice nobles and a woman who bites her bread with such intensity it might be personal. You nod politely to both and keep your hands in your lap, where they can't touch anything sticky. The bishop appears, majestic and slightly cross-eyed from fasting or too much mead. He raises his hands. Silence flops across the room like a startled carp. He speaks of virtue and molasses, of the trials of street Frangipan, who allegedly once survived on nothing but rose water and lozenges for 40 days and emerged with luminous gums. You wonder if he also had hallucinations of sugar plums whispering Latin. You wonder if that's the goal. A silver plate is brought out. Slowly, reverently. It contains exactly 1 candied fig. It glistens with the untrustworthy shimmer of something made by someone too devout or too bored. The fig is passed from hand to hand like a sacred truth, each person holding it as if it might whisper secrets or absolve sins. You watch it make its way down the table. One man kisses it. A child tries to bite it and is stopped by a sharp look and a faster spoon. When it reaches you, you hold it delicately, like a guilt you haven't yet confessed. The sugar crust is cracking slightly, revealing the fruit's dark interior, sticky and ancient. You are not sure whether to bless it or ask it for advice. You settle for pretending to be moved. You press it to your forehead and nod solemnly. The woman beside you grunts in approval. The licorice noble gives you a thumbs up. The fig moves on. The bishop takes his seat. A novice, trembling with either divine awe or allergies, brings him a plate with 3 gumdrops and a small pile of what might be preserved apple or very clean gravel. He raises a gumdrop to the congregation. The congregation raises its expectations. He puts it in his mouth. He chews once, then coughs again. He is not choking. He is transforming. The bishop's eyes go wide. He grips the edge of the table as if he is about to ascend. The room holds its breath. He makes a sound halfway between a hiccup and a revelation. The novice, pale and sweating, backs away. Someone whispers that the gumdrop was too holy. Someone else whispers that it wasn't holy enough. The bishop recovers. He blinks 6 times, then nods to no one. Then he laughs. This does not calm anyone. A second novice, younger and vibrating with spiritual confusion, steps forward and declares that he saw God in the gumdrop. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. He says God looked like a boiled sweet and smelled faintly of burnt sugar and forgiveness. The bishop waves a hand as if to bless the moment or brush it away like a fly. No one dares question the novice, not out loud. The feast continues with a sort of reverent panic. Dishes appear and vanish. Sweetened leeks wrapped in despair. Honeyed almonds coated in something someone insists is cinnamon. A pie filled with fig, date, and possibly boot leather. Everything tastes like a memory you don't want to examine too closely. You chew slowly and carefully, aware that any bite might be divine or dental. Someone attempts a toast. It's in Latin and involves several gestures that might be blessings or warnings. A jug of wine circulates. You drink from it and instantly regret everything. It tastes like betrayal and raisins. The candied fig makes another lap around the room, now slightly licked, but still revered. A child tries to touch it and is met with a collective gasp so strong it moves the banners on the wall. You slip outside for air. The cathedral looms behind you like a grandmother with secrets. The stars are out. One blinks. You chew a piece of hard biscuit to ground yourself and wonder if Saint Frangipan would have approved. You suspect he wouldn't. You suspect he preferred wafers made of silence and anxiety. When you return, the bishop is humming. The novice is writing scripture with a quill made from licorice root. The candied fig is gone. No one saw who took it. No one wants to ask. You sit down and find a gumdrop on your plate. It was not there before. It wobbles with quiet menace. You eat it because to do otherwise would feel like heresy. It is sweet, sharp, and vaguely judgmental. It reminds you of your aunt. You chew carefully. That night, your dreams are vivid and poorly structured. A gumdrop rides a donkey through your thoughts. The bishop floats by on a candied fig. The novice sings hymns in your teeth. In the morning, you wake with sugar on your pillow and a faint sense that something important happened, though you're not sure whether it was spiritual or gastrointestinal. You wash your face, check your molars, and pray out of habit, not certainty. The cathedral is closed. The fig is still missing. The novice has started glowing slightly. You never get a straight answer, but everyone in town smiles more carefully for the next week. The morning arrives without announcement. No bells, no rooster. Just a vague gray light that leaks through your shutters and the unsettling absence of stickiness. You rise slowly, checking your hair for molasses, licorice shreds, or honeycrumbs. Nothing, not even a suspicious glisten. Your pillow smells like linen and loss. Outside, the village feels muted, like it's holding its breath or has forgotten a song it once knew by heart. You step into your boots, and they don't squelch. The dirt path is unusually dry. No sugar slush. No stray candied nuts stuck to the cobbles. You pass the bakery. The windows are open. The oven is lit. but there is no scent of burnt caramel or passive-aggressive cinnamon, just bread. Honest, unsweetened bread. A round, tragic loaf stares back at you from the shelf. You nod at it, out of pity, and move on. At the square, the sugar merchant's usual cart space is empty. No wheel ruts, no dropped sprinkles, not even a single fraudulent nougat wrapper. Just a rectangle of dust where dreams once parked. You stare for a long time. Someone behind you coughs. You turn. It's the village elder who usually hoards licorice coins in his beard and grumbles about youth and nutmeg. He holds a turnip. He looks afraid. By mid-morning, the news is confirmed. No candy. No candied anything. The apothecary has nothing but real herbs and unhelpful advice. The baker weeps softly over a tray of plain biscuits. The beekeeper is seen pacing his glade, whispering sweet nothings to bees who refuse to hum. A child licks a tree bark out of instinct and is gently guided away by her mother, who looks like she hasn't blinked since sunrise. At noon, the mayor calls an emergency assembly, though the bell used to summon such meetings is suspiciously silent. You gather in the square, standing in uneven lines, shoulders hunched, eyes sunken from sugar withdrawal and communal confusion. The mayor clears his throat and announces that the merchant has left no note, no hint, no prophecy, just vanished, as if carried off by regret or a well-organized swarm of antique wasps. He then tries to hand out slices of boiled carrot to everyone, citing moral fiber. You accept one. You chew. You regret. Children sit in circles and speak in low voices, reminiscing about gumdrops they once held, licorice ropes they used to swing from trees, the way rock candy used to shimmer like lies in the sundae. One child holds up a pebble and insists it tastes sort of like toffee if you pretend. You do not pretend. You bite your tongue instead, just to feel something sweet. Dinner is boiled cabbage. Again, you stare at your bowl long enough that it starts to feel like a dare. No one says grace. No one speaks. Somewhere in the distance, a cow moos with existential despair. You lie in bed that night, jaw aching from gnawing on hard roots, tongue numb from betrayal. You dream of sugar plums that dissolve into tears. The licorice vines from earlier dreams have wilted. Even in nightmares, the flavor is gone. The second day is worse. The weather is fine, which feels cruel. Sunshine should accompany cherries, not absence. You try to barter for old honeycomb at the miller's, but he's already sold it to someone who claimed it was art. The miller shrugs apologetically. His lips are chapped from sorrow. You visit the apothecary again. He offers you a paste made of ground figs and hope. It tastes like forgetting. The third day, you give up. The village gives up. Laughter becomes a memory. Even the goats seem less smug. A child tries to eat a candle. It does not go well. A teenager starts writing sad poems about raisins. The bishop attempts to declare it a test from above, but chokes mid-sermon on an oat flake and calls it a sign. You nod, because at this point, anything could be a sign. And then, just before sunset, just as the color is draining from the sky, and someone has begun to suggest organizing a festival to celebrate natural flavors, it happens. A shout, then a squeal, then a gathering. At the edge of the square, beneath the splintered bench near the well, a small hand lifts something golden and crumpled. A caramel. Real. Slightly dusty. Wrapped in wax. Untouched. Unsucked. Unclaimed. The crowd closes in like pilgrims around a relic. You are close enough to see the shimmer. Faint, but certain. The child holds it aloft. Eyes wide. Heart pure. There is no violence. No theft. No biting. Instead, the child tears it gently in half and passes one piece to the baker, who gasps like it's his first breath. The other half is cut again, then again. Tiny slivers passed like communion. Each person gets a flake, a fragment, a molecule. You place it on your tongue and close your eyes. For a moment, everything sharpens. The wind is warm again. The earth hums. Someone laughs. It is small, cracked, and miraculous. The caramel is gone before you swallow. But the taste lingers. Just enough. That night, no one dreams of candy, but no one cries either. You sleep with a faint smile and wake with a plan. The merchant may have vanished, but sugar still exists. Somewhere, the village will rebuild. There will be recipes, experiments, and desperate innovation. Someone whispers about maple trees. Someone else swears they saw a glimmer of molasses near the creek. You volunteer to investigate. Hope, it turns out, is mildly sticky, and it tastes faintly of dusted caramel.